Chapter 1294. The sandstorm and sandstorm cannonball collided with each other and exploded in the entire space. It was as if there was a sandstorm in the surrounding area. Cough, 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 cough. Jiao Yuao, Harai Hiroyuki, Letitia, and Aster coughed at the same time. It was as if they were choked by the sandstorm that suddenly spread out. Seeing this, Noah stretched out his hand and a strand of magic flame appeared between his fingers. After sliding a few times in the air, it formed a strange rune. The incarnation called Priest not only could give Noah the power of domination and protection, it could also give Noah the right to use the rune again. The power of the rune that was activated with authority was probably comparable to the rune used by Odin, the main god of Norse mythology, who obtained magic power from the fountain of wisdom at the cost of an eye. However, the rune that Noah constructed was only a low-level rune that could form a breeze. Therefore, when the glowing rune was formed in the air, a breeze swept through the entire space, carrying the thick sand that filled the air and blowing it into the distance. The group of girls stopped coughing and breathed quickly. Jiao Yuao glared at Noah and said loudly, "Why did you suddenly attack?" Sorry, I just wanted to confirm something." Noah quickly raised his hands and made a gesture of surrender, but there was a smile on his face. "However, Yuao, I can now clearly tell you that your gift is not domination, but bestowal." Bestowal? Jiao Yuao was stunned. Bestowal? Harai Hiroyuki and Letitia were also stunned. Then they brought Aster and came forward together. "Yuao's gift is not domination, but bestowal?" Letitia was a little surprised and looked at Noah with some doubt. "Master Noah, what is going on?" Juyuan Fei Niao also looked at Noah with a questioning look in his eyes. Under everyone's gaze, Noah pondered for a moment, deliberated for a moment, and said so. "Actually, I should have realized that Flying Bird's gift is not domination, because the domination ability doesn't have the ability to control people's hearts. At least, my domination ability doesn't have such power. Controlling a person's body and controlling a person's heart are two completely different things. The former forced the individual's actions to go against their own will, but it would not affect the individual's spirit and consciousness. The latter, on the other hand, was a mental power that leaned towards bewitchment and hypnotism. It did not force the target under one's control to act. Instead, it controlled the target's heart and made them act on their own. Noah's domination could clearly force an individual to act according to his orders, but it would not affect the opponent's mind and will. On the other hand, the ancient flying bird was able to force others to act without affecting their mental state. It was able to make them reveal their inner secrets and thoughts according to its orders. This was evident from the fact that Jard's mind and spirit weren't affected when he was manipulated by Juyuan Fei Niao, but he still revealed his inner thoughts. In other words, the ancient flying bird situation did not belong to the former, nor did it belong to the latter. It did not force an individual to act, nor did it affect the individual's mind and will. This proved that the ancient flying bird's gift was not as simple as domination. Noah also came to a conclusion from the experiment just now. The ancient flying bird's gift did not affect an individual's body or mind, but rather, it affected the spiritual core. Spiritual core? Everyone exclaimed in surprise. Spiritual core? Jiao Yuao was also surprised. "That's right, it's the spiritual core." Noah said in a confident tone. "My domination is obviously stronger than Flying Bird's domination, but in the collision just now, my attack and Flying Bird's attack canceled each other out. This is enough to prove that there's a problem." Hearing this, everyone began to realize that something was wrong. Now that Master Noah has mentioned it, the situation when Flying Bird attacked just now was indeed a little strange. Letitia's expression became serious. When Flying Bird gave the order to attack, the sandstorm that was controlled by Flying Bird suddenly became a few times stronger, which cancelled out Master Noah's attack. It became a few times stronger? Kasumi tilted his head and asked in confusion. The power of domination can make the target of domination stronger? Of course, that's impossible. Noah shook his head and looked at Jiao Fei Niao, who was at a loss. "So, I'm guessing that Flying Bird's gift is not domination, but a power that affects the spiritual core. Noah recalled Jared's situation and said so. The true nature of flying birds, domination, should be to use its own spiritual core to attach itself to another individual's body through language, so that the target with a spiritual core weaker than flying bird will obey flying bird's orders. It's the same with the sandstorm just now. Flying bird used its own spiritual core to attach itself to the sandstorm, so that the sandstorm would obey its orders, Noah explained. The reason why the sandstorm that obeyed the orders suddenly became a few times stronger is probably because flying bird enhanced the spiritual core that was attached to the sandstorm. Enhanced the spiritual core? Letitia was shocked, and the way she looked at ancient flying bird changed instantly. Could it be that the true power of flying bird's gift is to give a simulated godhead? Letitia's words shocked Noah. However, after the shock, Noah's heart skipped a beat. If flying bird's gift can really enhance an individual's spiritual core, then it might really be the gift of giving a simulated godhead. Noah was very familiar with the existence of godhead. It could raise the level of a race to the highest level, raise the spiritual core of a race to the highest level, and increase the life level and power level of an individual by several times. In this box, it could be said to be the highest level of gift. Wanting to obtain this kind of gift was not something that could be done easily. Since it was called Godhead, then this kind of gift could only be bestowed by those gods. And if one wanted to be recognized by the gods and be bestowed with Godhead, it was not an easy thing to do. That was why the gift of simulated divinity had appeared. If Godhead could be said to be able to raise the level of a race to the highest level, and raise the spiritual core of an individual to the highest level, so that the gift of the person who obtained Godhead would be increased correspondingly, then simulated Godhead could only be used to increase the power of a certain gift. It could increase the power of a gift, and specialize the gift, with the ability to increase the spiritual core of the gift. In short, it was an inferior version of Godhead. It could not increase the life level of a race to the highest level. It could not increase the spiritual core of an individual to the highest level, and then increase the power of the other gifts that the individual had. It could only increase the power of the spiritual core of a limited gift to the highest level. Therefore, if the gift of the ancient flying bird could increase the spiritual core of an individual, then it would undoubtedly be the power of simulated Godhead. If the gift of the ancient flying bird could really bestow simulated Godhead. Letitia was a little shaken. Then this gift is really against the rules. Against the rules? Haruhibu Yaichi said in confusion. Is simulated Godhead really that powerful? What's powerful is not simulated Godhead, but bestowing simulated Godhead, Noah reminded him. Think about it carefully. If the ancient flying bird can bestow simulated Godhead at any time, then it means that by using those ordinary gifts, the ancient flying bird can increase those gifts to the level of an ordinary god. We only need to prepare a dozen ordinary gifts for the ancient flying bird, which is equivalent to giving the ancient flying bird a dozen gifts that are comparable to a god's. Hearing Noah's words, Haruhibu Yaichi realized that the ancient flying bird's gift was against the rules, and his eyes widened slightly. Wasn't it? There were strong and weak gifts. Weak gifts could only be used in daily life. Strong gifts were comparable to those of the real Asura gods and Buddhas, giving people the power of Asura gods and Buddhas. If the ancient flying bird could increase ordinary gifts to the level of Asura gods and Buddhas at any time, then it would be terrifying. Therefore, Noah directly said, "No matter what, let's try it first." Chapter 1295. 10 minutes later, Haruhito Masaki, Letitia, and Aster looked at the scene in front of them, and all of them fell into a state of speechlessness. Noah and Jiyuki were still facing each other in the field, but the two of them were in a completely different place. The ground had a charred color. Cracks spread out in all directions like a spider web. In some places, craters were blasted open. Some places seemed to have been cut by sharp blades. Some places seemed to have been hit by strong currents. Some places seemed to have been frozen, sprinkled with ice particles. Undoubtedly, 10 minutes ago, this open space was still in good condition, but it was somewhat deserted. Now, this open space seemed to have encountered some kind of disaster and was a mess. Under such circumstances, with Noah as the leader, Haruhito Masaki, Letitia, Aster, and the others all looked around and fell into silence. On the other hand, Jiao Fei Niao stared at his own hands in disbelief. Is this my gift? The reason for this mess was Jiao-yuki. To be more precise, it should be Jiao-yuki's gift. In order to confirm whether Jiao-yuki's gift was the power to simulate divinity, 10 minutes ago, Noah gave Jiao-yuki 5 magic scrolls. Those 5 magic scrolls were all first-grade magic scrolls. And after using them, the magic that could be cast was the simplest of the 5 first-grade spells. The first-grade spell that could cast fire. The first-grade spell that could cast electricity. The first-grade spell that could cast a breeze. The first-grade spell that could cast a stream of water spirit spring. It was the first-rank spell that could freeze objects. No matter which one it was, they were the weakest first-grade spells in the previous world. However, under Jiao-yuki's gift, the power of these 5 first-grade spells all changed. The fire that could only be used to light a bonfire was raised to the level of nuclear heat. The electric current that could only cause a slight electric shock was raised to the level of lightning. The breeze, which could only sweep up some papers, was raised to the level of a gale. The water flow, which was only comparable to a small stream, was raised to the level of a wave. Even the cold air, which could only freeze objects, was raised to absolute zero. There was no doubt that the ancient flying bird's blessing was able to increase the output of Ling Ji's power. In other words, it was a power that could increase the power of Ling Gu. That was the power to bestow upon an individual the boon of divine persona. Just like what Noah said 10 minutes ago. Under the ancient flying bird's might, even the most ordinary of blessings would become comparable to some Asura gods and Buddhas under the amplification of the simulated divinity. Such an exceptional ability is truly amazing, Letitia murmured, not knowing whether to be happy or sad. However, this explains why the ancient flying bird's blessing is the same as 16th Night's blessing as the strongest of human blessings. It is indeed a power that ordinary blessings cannot compare to. Hiroyuki nodded lightly, looking at Jiao-yuki, then looking at Noah, and then thinking of 16th Night's power. His hand that was holding the round wooden sculpture in front of him began to tighten little by little. If that's the case, then we can basically confirm it. Noah said with a smile that seemed to be both amazed and lamenting. Flying bird, your blessing is indeed not some kind of control, but rather the gift of a simulated divinity. Is that so? Jiao-yuki looked around with a complicated expression, then laughed at herself. In the end, my blessing is not control at all, how ironic. Before she was summoned to the box, everyone around Jiao Yufei was afraid of this young Mrs. Control because of her Wei Guang ability. She was even locked up in a dormitory in the school. In the end, Jiao-yuki was told that her power was not control, but control was just a byproduct of her true power. It was no wonder she was so complicated. This is good too. Jiao-yuki pulled herself together, showing her usual generous smile. At least, I now know that my power is not limited to the aspect of dominating others. Since I can give individuals simulated divinity and maximize the contribution of the bestowed spirit, then in the future, I will develop in the aspect of dominating the bestowed gifts. Because of her past experience, Jiao-yuki did not want to become a witch that controlled others. Now that she found another way to improve herself, no matter what, Jiao-yuki should be happy. Unfortunately, Noah immediately poured a bucket of cold water on her. The idea is very good, but in this way, you will have to face a huge problem. A huge problem? Jiao-yuki was slightly stunned, then quickly asked. What problem? Noah sighed and walked towards Jiao-yuki. When he arrived in front of Jiao-yuki, he picked up some pieces of parchment on the ground. These shredded pieces of parchment were the magic scrolls that ancient flying bird had used before. You know what? This is actually a one-time use blessing? Noah spread out the sheepskin parchment in his hand and showed it to Jiao Fei Niao. Under normal circumstances, after using the parchment paper will directly burn up, leaving not a single trace behind. However, you used those scrolls and left behind these fragments. Do you know why? Yuki frowned and shook her head, indicating that she did not understand. To this, Noah directly gave the answer. The reason why the pieces were left behind is because before they were burned, they broke on their own for another reason. They broke on their own. Yuki frowned even more. But the one who answered this question was not Noah, but Letitia. Because you maximized the power of the blessing, increasing the burden of the blessing itself to the maximum. This way, the lifespan of the blessing will be greatly reduced. Letitia walked over with Harai Hiroyuki and asked her. She looked at Jio Asuka with a serious expression. So, Yuki, although your blessing is very powerful, its weakness is also very obvious. Unless there are enough blessings for you to use, you won't be able to do anything. What? Yuki's expression suddenly became very interesting. In other words, Harai Hiroyuki blinked. Yuki's blessing is actually a very expensive blessing? If you have to summarize, then this is it. Letitia also said with difficulty. Normal blessings will be destroyed after you use them. Even if it's a powerful blessing, if you use it, its lifespan will be greatly reduced. So, Yuki, you have to be prepared. If you want to fight to your heart's content, you will have to spend a lot of money. Yuki's expression was completely stiff. The heavens took pity on her. This young lady did not hesitate to join this poor community because she hated the conditions of being too rich. Now, in order to use her true power, she had to spend a lot of money? It had to be said that this was really ironic. Be that as it may, your gift is indeed very powerful. It is even possible for the gift of a simulated divinity to release the power of the divinity level under certain circumstances, right? Letitia looked at Noah with an amused expression. Of course, this shouldn't be a problem for Master Noah, who has endless divinity-level blessings. If Master Noah can provide you with a powerful blessing with a very long lifespan, I think Yuki's combat power will increase by quite a few levels, right? Hearing this, Noah slightly raised his eyebrows. You're targeting me now? Unfortunately, Yuki did not hesitate to reject. It's not impossible to be indebted to others, but it's unreasonable to ask them not to give anything in return. I will find a way to solve the problem of blessings myself. Noah was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. I almost forgot. This young lady's pride is very strong. Chapter 1296. In fact, Ancient Flying Bird's gift could bestow a simulated divinity to the target. It was not only a gift, but it could also be bestowed on people, things, and objects. Otherwise, the ancient flying bird wouldn't have been able to place a simulated divinity in a being's body and have it listen to its orders. Therefore, even if it did not specifically prepare a gift, ancient flying bird could still bestow a simulated divinity to other objects and fight. Unfortunately, there would be a lot of restrictions in this way. For example, if the divinity mentioned above was higher than ancient flying bird's body, then ancient flying bird would not be able to control it. This was because ancient flying bird's simulated divinity was given through language. The voice would gradually become weaker in the process of being transmitted. Based on the above principle, ancient flying bird's simulated divinity through language would definitely be degraded before it was transmitted to the target. According to the level of the target's divinity, it might even be resisted. Because of this, ancient flying bird's gift was not suitable to be used on control. It was the same when it confronted Noah. At that time, Noah, who used the priest incarnation, did not use any divine power. He did not even use all of his magic power. As a result, when Noah casually used control to attack, ancient flying bird had to release the simulated divinity of Sandstorm to the maximum extent to counteract it. As one could imagine, when giving a simulated divinity to an ordinary object, ancient flying bird's power would indeed be degraded through the speech process. However, if the target was a gift, then it would be different. After all, the gift itself had a divinity. After being strengthened by the simulated divinity, the divinity's power would be increased to the maximum, and the power would increase by a lot. Therefore, for ancient flying bird to be able to fully unleash its power, it would indeed have to be bestowed with a gift. Therefore, the path of the gift of the dominating gift, as determined by the ancient bird, is indeed the right one. The problem was that the cost of doing so was not small at all. Considering ancient flying bird's self-esteem, Noah did not insist on giving ancient flying bird a powerful gift. Otherwise, as long as he provided the ancient flying bird with 1 or 2 treasures, in addition to this young lady's simulated divinity, he reckoned that this girl could really compete with those famous heroic spirits or gods, right? Ancient flying bird was also very clear about this point. However, her excessive self-esteem did not allow this lady to receive others' gift without any effort. Therefore, this matter was temporarily left unsettled. Just like that, a noisy day, night, the base of no name, once again it was dark night. Because the water source problem had been solved, the bathhouse was now in a state of liberation almost every day. However, the time spent by boys and girls naturally had to be differentiated. This time, the bathhouse of the bathhouse. Usually, at this time, Noah would be hiding in the underground library to read, absorbing the knowledge and intelligence of the entire world. Unfortunately, within a month's time, flying birds, not a single book, ancient flying bird library. In other words, Noah flying bird had read all the books in the library of course. This was with the help of a magic tool. In the world of fairy tale, there was a magic pair of glasses that could increase one's reading speed to the limit, allowing one to finish reading a thick book in just a few minutes. Considering the fact that every time he entered a new world, he would need to recollect information, and there would be many opportunities to deal with books. The last time he returned to the world of fairy tale, Noah had prepared a pair of glasses like this. Because of this pair of glasses, Noah Flying Bird Library was able to finish reading all the books in a month's time. He also understood a lot about the situation in this world. Under this kind of situation, Noah Flying Bird Library had nothing to do. He simply asked Letitia and Aster, who were always by his side, to go to the bathhouse while he left the library. Once he walked out of the library, Noah Flying Bird Library saw a slender figure. He was slightly startled. After hesitating for a while, Noah Flying Bird Library deliberately slowed down his footsteps and walked towards the figure. The wind in the middle of the night carried a trace of coldness. Hurrah Flying Bird Library looked at the night sky. After a while, he lowered his head and looked at the 3-furred cat in his arms. Tell me, am I very useless? Hurrah Flying Bird Library's gift not only gave him the ability of animals, but also the ability to communicate with animals and beasts. Therefore, Hurrah Flying Bird Library could communicate with the cat in his arms. The cat that Hurrah Flying Bird Library brought from the original world was just an ordinary 3-furred cat. It was an old cat that was born on the same day, month, and year as Hurrah Flying Bird Library. Because of this, Hurrah Flying Bird Library brought the cat with him to the library. For Hurrah Flying Bird Library and the 3-furred cat, both of them were very important. Hurrah Flying Bird Library didn't have the ability to speak his mind in front of his companions, but to the 3-furred cat, Hurrah Flying Bird Library could speak his mind without hesitation. 16 Nights has extraordinary power. Flying Bird Library also has the ability to imitate godhood. Even Noah Flying Bird Library has almost endless godhood. Flying Bird Library's gift equipment. Compared to them, I am really too weak. Thinking of this, Hurrah Flying Bird Library couldn't help but tightly grasp the round wooden sculpture in front of him. That round wooden sculpture was actually a gift from Hurrah Flying Bird Library. It was called the Life Catalog, and it could give him the ability of animals and beasts. This gift was very important to Hurrah Flying Bird Library, because it was a gift from Hurrah Flying Bird Library's father. Father's gift to me must be very special. Hurrah Flying Bird Library tightly grasped the gift in front of him and said in a low voice, "That's what I've always thought. That's why I've always been confident that I'll be able to play my part by joining this community. But in the end, compared to Noah, 16 Nights, and Flying Bird, I'm at the bottom." Just as he finished speaking, a voice sounded behind Hurrah Flying Bird Library. "If you think so, then you are wrong." Hurrah Flying Bird Library was startled and quickly turned his head to look behind him. There, Noah, who was approaching, looked down at Hurrah Hataki from above. Their eyes met and he said, "I didn't expect you to be alone here thinking nonsense." "I'm not thinking nonsense." Hurry Flying Bird Library seemed to be embarrassed that Noah Flying Bird Library found his dejected look, so he said awkwardly, "In fact, right now, among the main members of the community, I am indeed at the bottom." "You said it yourself, that is now." Noah Flying Bird Library said very seriously. "Even if you are slightly behind the others now, who knows what will happen in the future? In our era, there is a saying that if you are one step ahead, you will not be ahead." Hurry Flying Bird Library said in a rare tone of voice, "Since you are already one step ahead of me, then it is not impossible to continue to be ahead of me. But that is only a possibility." Noah Flying Bird Library looked at Hurry Flying Bird Library and sighed. "If we are talking about possibilities, then you will directly surpass us and be in the lead. Is there no such possibility?" Hurry Flying Bird Library was suddenly speechless. Don't forget, whether it is Black Rabbit or Letitia, they have said it before. Noah Flying Bird Library said to Hurry Flying Bird Library. 16 Nights Reversal, Geo Flying Bird Library, and Hurry Flying Bird Library have the highest level of grace among humans. Since 16 Nights and Flying Bird Library have that level of power, then as the highest level of grace among humans, your life catalog must have power that others have not discovered. Power that others have not discovered. Hurry Flying Bird Library tightened the wooden carving in front of him and fell into silence. Noah Flying Bird Library did not disturb Hurry Flying Bird Library. Together with this quiet girl, they quietly looked at the night sky. The night quietly passed under such circumstances. After a long time. Chapter 1297. The next day, Noah arrived at No Name's former farm site early in the morning and began to inspect the barren land. Accompanying him were Black Rabbit, Letitia, and Aster. Accompanied by the rustling sound of footsteps, a group of 4 people walked back and forth in this extremely desolate land. Everything in sight was a piece of desolation. Looking at the barren ruins, Noah and Aster aside, Letitia had a sad look on her face. "Sure enough, no matter how I look at it, it doesn't look like it can be revived. Lady Letitia, you can't give up." Black Rabbit hurriedly comforted her. "At least, the land left for us by our former comrades still exists and has not been taken away. As long as the land is still there, it can be restored. Indeed, now is not the time to be immersed in sadness." Letitia nodded as if she was reflecting, then looked at Noah. "Then, Master Noah, do you really have a way to restore the life of this land in a short period of time?" Hearing this, Black Rabbit also looked at Noah with anticipation. Today, when everyone was chatting in the discussion room, they inadvertently brought up the issue of the land again. It was not that they liked to talk about this topic, but the entire No Name's base was almost all barren land. As long as one lived here, it was inevitable that they would see it every day. Naturally, no one would be happy to see the place where they lived turned into ruins. Under such circumstances, it was inevitable that this topic would often be brought up. After all, to solve the land problem earlier, it would be a good thing for everyone and for the community. So, Letitia told everyone that Noah had a way to solve the land problem. Therefore, Black Rabbit was excited. It couldn't wait to pull Noah to inspect the land. No one doubted Noah's words. It was not only because Noah had no need to lie about this kind of thing, but also because, a month ago, when Noah fought against Astral Spirit Argel, the scene of him using an endless amount of divine spark bestowment weapons to perform an extremely extravagant projection left a deep impression on everyone. One had to know that even the Black Rabbit, who was the descendant of Sakra, the guardian god of Hinduism, was only bestowed with a weapon that simulated divinity. Thus, on that day, even White Yaksha was scared speechless by Noah's endless divine spark bestowment weapons, let alone the others. And with so many godhead blessings, it wouldn't be strange at all if one of them could be used to revive the land here. In addition, during this period of time, whenever the community encountered difficulties in some aspect, Noah could always take out magical items that could be used in various situations. In everyone's hearts, Noah had long been branded with an almost omnipotent mark. If it weren't for the fact that there was no Doraemon in the box that could take out all kinds of high-tech props from the fourth-dimensional pocket, Noah would probably have been called Doraemon by everyone at this moment. Noah naturally did not know what the others thought of him. He only looked around at the abandoned land that had turned into a barren wasteland and nodded. Restoring the vitality of the land here is not a problem. What I'm thinking about now is how much land to restore. Black Rabbit's long rabbit ears drooped. Can't it all be restored? It's not that it can't all be restored, but some of it doesn't need to be restored immediately, Noah corrected. After all, in this community, apart from us who need to participate in the game, there are only 120 children who can be used to maintain the land. They wouldn't have the ability to maintain such a huge piece of land, would they? Master is right. Letitia thought for a moment and nodded as well. With the current situation of our community, there is no way to maintain such a large piece of land. If all the land is restored, it will inevitably lead to a large piece of land being abandoned due to the lack of manpower. In that case, we shouldn't waste the precious bestowments and restore all the land. I can use other bestowments to summon a lot of manpower. Noah scratched his cheek. But considering the various problems before the community is truly developed, there is really no need to restore such a large piece of land. So, for the time being, let's restore a part of it first. Yes. Black Rabbit was energized. I understand. I will choose the part of the land that needs to be restored as soon as possible. Noah and Letitia nodded in unison. Speaking of which, Noah looked around and said with some emotion, looking at it this way, it's really hard to imagine that this place was still a vibrant farm 3 years ago. To be honest, I'm not very willing to believe it either, Letitia said with a grim expression. I believe that I have lived for a long time and have met many demon kings. In fact, this body of mine was also a sinner in the past. However, the number of times I have met a demon king with such strength can be counted on one hand. Counted on one hand? Noah raised his eyebrows. Do you mean that people with such strength are still people with such strength? Doesn't Mr. Noah also know such people? Black Rabbit reminded. For example, Lord White Yaksha is not only the astral spirit in charge of the sun's operation, but he is also a Buddhist deity. If that Lord has such strength, it's not strange at all. White Yaksha himself has also evaluated that an existence that can turn this land into such a state is probably not inferior to him. Letitia's voice revealed a sense of heaviness. Inferring from this, it has to be at least the strongest demon king, right? Astral spirits, natural deities, pure-blooded dragons. These 3 races were known as the strongest races of the box court. They were terrifying existences that other races could not touch. For example, the astral spirit of the demon star, Argel, who was enslaved by Luos, had a greatly reduced spiritual lattice. Due to Luos's immaturity, he was also wearing a restraining device on his body. Under such repeated weakening, Luos's community was still able to stand firmly at the 5-digit level. If Argel released all of her strength as an astral spirit, let alone a 5-digit number, even a 4-digit number would be ruthlessly left behind by her, right? White Yaksha was once a 2-digit demon king in the past. His strength was terrifyingly strong. Letitia's eyes flickered. An existence that can make White Yaksha face seriously, then the demon king that caused the destruction of our community has to be at least a 3-digit number, right? 3-digit number? Noah muttered softly. That's really troublesome. It was more than troublesome. After all, a 4-digit number was already the level of those famous Asura gods and Buddhas. And a 3-digit number was the peak existence of the god king and main god in various myths and legends. After staying in this world for a month, Noah was no longer as clueless as before about the levels of this world. In Noah's opinion, even if a god slayer came here, it was estimated that he would be between a 4-digit number and a 5-digit number. Existences like Warban and Luo Hao were estimated to be at the 4-digit number level. Moreover, they were not at the peak. In Noah's memory, only the infinite dragon god Orpheus in the world of Demon High School had the qualifications to be comparable to those terrifying existences in the 3-digit number level. In other words, Even if Noah went all out and used 2 of the 10 avatars' authority at the same time, he would at most reach a 3-digit number level. Not to mention, using 2 avatars at the same time would cause an extremely heavy burden on the body and mind. Even now, Noah did not have the confidence to be able to use it without any burden. Just as the group was immersed in the assessment of the strength of the demon king that destroyed the community, a panicked voice rang out. "Everyone!" Lily shouted as she ran towards them. "As something bad has happened." Immediately, everyone's hearts hardened. Chapter 1298. In the meeting room, the main force members of the community were all gathered together. They sat around a table and cast their eyes on an envelope placed on the table. It was an invitation letter. On the invitation letter, there was a wax seal with a picture of 2 goddesses. The picture of 2 goddesses? Noah tilted his head and said, "Isn't that the flag of 1,000 Eyes?" "The picture of 2 goddesses is the flag of 1,000 Eyes." Black Rabbit answered obediently. "Therefore, this invitation letter should be sent by Lord White Yaksha." "White Yaksha sent it?" Noah blinked. "Then it shouldn't be a bad thing, right? Considering Lord White Yaksha's relationship with us, it shouldn't be a bad thing." Ren, as the leader of the community, said with a tone that was not very confident. "In the past, Lord White Yaksha would sometimes send us invitations, inviting Black Rabbit to be a judge in some large-scale game of grace. This time, the invitation should be about the same. Mr. 16 Knights and I have come to the same conclusion." Hearing this, Noah's shoulders drooped and he looked at Lily with annoyance. "Since it's not a bad thing, Lily, why are you making such a fuss?" "I'm sorry." Lily's fox ears also drooped down and she was a little dejected. "I became nervous when I saw the 1,000 Eyes flag seal on the invitation letter." Hearing Lily's words, everyone smiled bitterly. According to Lily, about 10 minutes ago, she was planning to clean the meeting room when she suddenly found the invitation letter on the table. When she saw the 1,000 Eyes flag as the seal, Lily panicked and called everyone over in a fuss. However, in general, although it was a bit of a fuss, since it was an invitation letter from 1,000 Eyes, it should be necessary to gather everyone for a discussion. The prerequisite was that the invitation letter was important enough. If this invitation was like what Ren said, it was just to invite Black Rabbit to be the judge of a large-scale game of grace, then there was nothing for the rest of them to do. Well, no matter what, it's still an invitation from the ruler of the social class. 16 Knights yawned in boredom. "I hope it's not something so boring." "Renjun." Juyuan Fei Niao cast his gaze towards Renjun. "Have you opened this invitation letter and read it?" "Not yet." Ren shook his head. "Considering that it might be an invitation for Black Rabbit to be the judge, I think it's better for Black Rabbit to open it." "Is that so?" Huribu Yaichi nodded and picked up the invitation on the table. "If that's the case, then let me open it." The Black Rabbit blinked and said in confusion. According to the development just now, shouldn't the Black Rabbit be the one to open the envelope? It doesn't matter who opens it." Noah sighed. "Anyway, since it's an invitation from the ruler of the social class, let's hurry up and see what's inside." Everyone's eyes were focused on Huribu Yaichi. At this time, Huribu Yaichi had already opened the envelope and took out the invitation letter inside. Immediately after, Huribu Yaichi's voice echoed in the entire room. A joint ceremony held by the rulers of the Eastern and Northern Districts' Fire Dragon Birth Ceremony. Fire Dragon Birth Ceremony? Black Rabbit, Juan Fei Niao, and Ren were slightly stunned. Fire Dragon Birth Ceremony? Letitia and Lily were also confused. Obviously they didn't know about the existence of such a ceremony. Noah and 16 Knights, on the other hand, noticed another important point. A joint ceremony held by the rulers of the Eastern and Northern Districts? The two of them looked at each other. "Hey bro," 16 Knights asked. "What do you think?" "Undoubtedly, you already have the answer in your heart, right?" Noah said in annoyance. "Why are you still asking me? Let's see if we have the same idea." 16 Knights said this, but his expression was completely like a challenge to Noah. "Why don't you tell me what you think?" Hearing the conversation between Noah and 16 knights, everyone's eyes were focused on the two of them. "What's wrong?" Ren asked with some uncertainty. "Is there a problem with this invitation letter?" 16 knights didn't speak, but looked at Noah and motioned for Noah to explain. At this moment, Noah shook his head with a smile, but he still said his thoughts. "The problem isn't the invitation letter, but the ceremony itself." After saying this, Noah looked at Ren. "Do the Eastern, Southern, Western, and Northern districts often hold joint ceremonies? Although there have been, it's not very common." Ren answered with a serious expression. "Although there are many connections between the districts, there is also a kind of healthy competition between the 4 districts in normal times to promote each other's development. Therefore, under normal circumstances, joint ceremonies between 2 districts can't be held too frequently. Then, why is the Eastern and Northern districts holding a joint ceremony this time?" Noah said. "This is the question that 16 knights and I have." After saying that, Noah took the invitation letter from Hurai Buyao's hand and explained while looking at it. This time, the main venue of the ceremony is the Northern District. In the ceremony, in addition to the art and crafts exhibition made by the spirits and elves in the Northern District, there will also be a variety of gift games. Rather than saying that the ceremony is jointly held by the 2 districts, it's better to say that the ceremony is held by the Northern District and the Eastern District is just a subsidiary. After hearing Noah's words, everyone felt that something was wrong. There is a healthy competition between the districts. Therefore, if the 2 districts hold a joint ceremony, in order to highlight the characteristics of their respective districts and show the pride of the 2 districts, it is unlikely that there will be a pattern that is obviously biased towards one side. In other words, there must be a deeper reason for the fire dragon's birth ceremony to be held. As for the reason, there's too little information at the moment, so there's no way to speculate. However, if it's not something good, the possibility of us getting involved is very high. Noah tossed the invitation in his hand onto the table. Whether to get involved in this mess or not, it's up to the leader to decide. At this time, everyone's eyes gathered on Ren. Feeling the gaze of so many people present, Ren seemed to be a little nervous, but he still seriously pondered. After a while, he looked at 16 knights with an inquiring look. Receiving Ren's look, 16 knights directly said, "I think it's better to participate. After all, it's an invitation letter personally sent by White Yiksha, who has taken good care of us. If we refuse, it's not worth it." As soon as he finished speaking, 16 knights reversal smiled arrogantly. "Also, this ceremony or whatever it is seems to be very interesting." Jiao Fei Niao and Kasuhito Hikari nodded. They agreed with 16 knights. Obviously, the so-called muddy water is a pursuit for a problem child. Thinking of this, Black Rabbit and Rin didn't want to participate in the fire dragon birth ceremony. In the end, it was Letitia who gave a decisive suggestion. "Actually, the fire dragon birth ceremony is also a good opportunity for us." Letitia looked at Ren. "After all, there will be a variety of gift games in the fire dragon birth ceremony, and it will be jointly held by 2 districts. The quality of the gift games is definitely not low, and the prizes are definitely not low, and our community is now in urgent need of development. Perhaps, in the fire dragon birth ceremony, we can get some good gifts, who knows?" "I also agree with Letitia's words," Jiao Fei Niao quickly said. "What I lack the most right now is grace. Without grace, I won't be able to display much of my combat strength. If I can win a lot of grace during the fire dragon's birth ceremony, it will come in handy when I fight the Demon King." Only then did everyone begin to ponder about it. After a long time, Rin made a decision. Chapter 1299. Boxting City, 2105-380 Outer Gate. In front of a fountain square, a group of no-name members, led by Noah, had arrived. He saw that other than the group from No Name, the rest of the people were also gathered in the fountain square. The main races were humans and beastmen. In the East District, the races that occupied the most were these 2 races. The people gathered in the fountain square had only one goal in mind. That was, in front of the fountain square, there was a door that looked like the gate of a solemn castle. The people here all wanted to pass through that door. After a while, the black rabbit jumped out of the crowd in front like a real rabbit and came to the front of Noah's group. "Everyone, the number plates for the outer gate have been prepared, please remember to take them." Saying this, Black Rabbit handed out pieces of dark gray metal plates to the people present. It was a metal plate with numbers engraved on the surface. The person who held this metal plate would have the right to pass through the realm gate. The so-called realm gate referred to the system that was set up to move around the huge box Ting City. It could connect every layer of the realm wall to every outer gate, allowing the people who passed through the outer gate to instantly teleport to the desired outer gate area. In other words, it was a teleportation door. Only by using this door could Noah's group arrive at the North District. Because this world had the surface area of a star, it was very large. Under such circumstances, as the center of this world, the area of Hakata City is boundlessly large, almost comparable to a planet. Because of this, if one wanted to move in such a huge city, the amount of time and labor needed was astonishing. Not to mention other things, just the 2105380 outer gate was about 980,000 kilometers away from the North District. With such a shocking distance, it was naturally impossible to use ordinary methods to reach it. Therefore, to be able to connect the outer gate to the outer gate, the importance of the realm gate was not ordinary. However, in order to activate the realm gate that connected to the outer sect, one would need to spend an astonishing amount of money. Therefore, every person who wanted to use the realm gate had to pay a gold coin issued by Thousand Eyes. For the lowest 7-digit community, a single gold coin issued by Thousand Eyes was a huge expense. Using No Name as an example, this one gold coin could probably support the entire community's food expenses for more than 10 days, right? If it wasn't for the fact that Noah had won a large amount of money from that spoiled brat, No Name would never have used the realm gate to head to the North District to participate in the fire dragon's birth ceremony. At that time, Ren probably wouldn't make the decision to participate as a group. Instead, he would hide the invitation letter and try his best not to be discovered by the 3 problem children, Retroactive 16 Knights, Juyuan Flying Bird, and Hurai Buyao. Now, with the large amount of money that Noah had won from Luce, it was enough to support the core members of No Name to use the realm gate. Of course, he still had to save where he could. Mr. Noah, Mr. 16 Knights, Miss Flying Bird, Miss Yao, Young Master Ren, a total of 5 number tags. Black Rabbit, who gave out the number tags, looked at Letitia and Aster with an embarrassed expression. As for Lady Letitia and Miss Aster, please be brought over by Mr. Noah. Letitia and Aster nodded at the same time, then looked at Noah. Noah understood and reached out his hand to hold Aster's small hand. In the next moment, Aster's body emitted a dazzling light, turning into light particles and gathering in Noah's hand, transforming into the shape of a silver dagger. Noah attached the silver dagger to his waist, then took out the dark gold gift card and aimed it at Letitia. Immediately afterward, Letitia also turned into a burst of light particles and surged into Noah's gift card. Noah then put her away. No matter who used the realm gate, they would need to spend a gold coin. The only exception was the gift that belonged to a certain person. Letitia had already signed a subordinate contract with Noah, becoming his gift. Therefore, Noah could use his gift card to keep the gift that belonged to him, the purebred vampire named Letitia. This way, Letitia and Aster would not need to spend the cost of using the realm gate. As for Black Rabbit, as a noble, she could use the realm gate for free. Not bad, little brother. Reverse 16 Knights said teasingly. Bringing 2 lowly maids with you, that's really blissful. Noah ignored him and turned back to 16 Knights. He looked at the number on the metal plate in his hand. The number 4,000,000 was written on it. That was the number of the outer gate. With this number tag, Noah could reach the 4000000 outer gate when he passed through the realm gate. That was the location of the fire dragon's birth ceremony in the North District. Although I have thought of using the teleportation gate spell on the staff of Ains Yuargong to move to the North District, I don't know where the fire dragon birth ritual is going to be held, so I'll just obediently use the realm gate here. With this thought, Noah raised his head and looked in the direction of the outer gate. The realm gate had always been activated at a fixed time. It would only be opened for personal use in an emergency. Therefore, every time it was activated, those who needed to use the realm gate would gather here. Clank! At a certain moment, the gate-like gate flashed with blue and white light, dyeing the entire gate into a strange state like water. The realm gate has been activated. Black Rabbit quickly said, "Everyone, remember to take the number tag. Otherwise, we don't know where we will be teleported to." With Noah as the leader, everyone nodded and walked towards the realm gate. Hudash. When Noah and the others walked out of the realm gate, a hot wind with a trace of temperature whistled past, sweeping across everyone's cheeks. Then, the scene in front of them was imprinted in everyone's eyes. Looking at the scene in front of them, Noah, 16 Nights Reversal, Jio Yufei, and Haruhito Masaaki were all stunned. Especially Jio Fei Niao, who sucked in a breath of cold air. A red wall? Yes. What entered the eyes of the group was a huge red realm wall. In Hakata City, in addition to the 7 circular realm walls that separated each level, there were 2 huge realm walls that were like diagonal lines that separated the entire Hakata City into 4 districts. Those 4 districts were the East, West, South, and North districts. The huge red realm wall in front of them was the realm wall that separated the East district and the North district. On the boundary wall, one could see monuments carved out of ores, arches of Gothic steeples that seemed to have been chiseled into buildings, and a huge triumphal arch that was formed by the combination of 2 outer doors that stood on the outer wall. In front of Noah and the others who were standing in front of the realm wall, there was a corridor that was decorated with colorful carved glass. In the cloister, there were actually candlesticks swaggering along the street with 2 feet, and people wearing all kinds of clothes like clowns coming and going, creating an extraordinarily lively scene. Aye! A walking candlesticks. Jio Yufei's eyes flashed with surprise as she pointed at the walking candlesticks and pulled Haruhito Masaaki's hand. "There's a walking candlesticks." "It's true," Haruhito Masaaki said in surprise. "It's completely different from the East District. It feels like we've entered another world. The main thing is that we're holding a ceremony now, and the culture in the North District is indeed different from the East District." Rin explained. "It's not time for the ceremony to start yet, but in a few days, it will probably be even more lively, right?" 16 Nights Reversal's emotions were immediately stirred up. "In any case, let's look around first." Everyone nodded in agreement. Chapter 1300. Hey! Look over there. Isn't that a rabbit? Where? It's really a rabbit? Why would a Hakata noble come to the lowest 7-digit level? To actually be able to see you too in the 7-digit level. We are so lucky. In the corridor decorated with red bricks and engraved glass, Noah and his group walked in the middle of the street while being pointed at by the people around them. It could be said that they had suddenly become the center of attention. Of course, in reality, only Black Rabbit was the center of attention. The rest of them did not receive any attention. Black Rabbit, who was walking in the middle of the crowd, endured the gazes from all directions. Although it looked calm on the surface, its pair of long rabbit ears drooped down heavily. Obviously, the gazes from all directions made Black Rabbit feel uneasy. Even though it had served as a referee for many large-scale bestowal games and was usually the center of attention in the Northern District, there were very few people who knew of Black Rabbit's existence. It was even more impossible for normal citizens to know that you too, a Hakata noble, would stay in a community at the lowest level. Not to mention, this community did not have a flag or a name. As a famous aristocrat of Hakata, if others were to find out that Black Rabbit was staying in a community that did not even have a flag or a name, it would not only be Black Rabbit, but even no name would suffer a lot of grief, right? Thinking about how the people around it were looking at it with all kinds of surprised gazes, and how when they knew that it was in no name, these surprised gazes would turn into shock and surprise, Black Rabbit felt a wave of unease. Fortunately, such a situation did not happen. Even if the people in the Northern District were extremely surprised that a Hakata noble would come to the lowest level, because it was a ceremony, the residents seemed to think that Black Rabbit was only here to join in the fun, or was invited to be a referee for various bestowal games. Not long after, the degree of surprise decreased by a lot. Only then did Black Rabbit let out a sigh of relief. Its pair of drooping rabbit ears perked up again. That's great. I thought there would be some unnecessary disputes. What? Do you feel uncomfortable with the gazes of the people around you? 16 Nights asked casually. Seeing that you've always pretended to be a bunny girl to please me, as long as you say the word, I'll help you chase everyone here away. Please don't. If we let Mr. Problem Child take action, it will definitely become the situation that Black Rabbit doesn't want to see the most. Black Rabbit's reaction was intense as it shouted. Also, the Black Rabbit has never pretended to be a rabbit girl to please Mr. 16 Nights. Please don't talk nonsense so seriously. Haruhibe Hikari looked at Black Rabbit in disbelief. You've never done it before? Why are you suspicious? Black Rabbit became even more agitated. I've never pretended to be a bunny girl. Isn't everyone clear about this? Hearing this, everyone immediately focused their gazes on Black Rabbit. Although he didn't dress up as a rabbit girl, the Black Rabbit's sexy mini dress was still a stimulus for ordinary people. Thus, the 16th night reversal directly left behind such a sentence. Although you're not a bunny girl, your usual outfit is quite embarrassing. Don't say it's embarrassing. Black Rabbit pulled out a paper fan from somewhere and slapped 16 Nights on the head with a loud sound. Mr. 16 Nights is a big idiot. Seeing Black Rabbit, Haruhibe Hikari, and the 16th night reversal happily fooling around, Rin couldn't help but smile bitterly and looked to the other side. Lanterns that can fly. Jiao Fei Niao used her sparkling eyes to look at a group of floating lanterns not far away as she tugged at Noah's clothes with all her might. I'm looking. Noah could only let Jitaka do whatever she wanted with an innocent face. So, stop pulling my clothes or they'll fall off. If it was a normal day, Jitaka, who had an extraordinary background, would definitely not continue to pester him due to her manners. However, today, Jitaka's mood was unusually high as she continued to pester Noah. Not only are there walking candlesticks, there are even flying lanterns. The Northern District is really a place filled with dreams. Jitaka said with anticipation. I wonder if there's a pumpkin-headed monster? It's the kind of monster that appears in that festival called Wan something. You mean the jack-o'-lantern, right? Noah agreed with a helpless expression. It's the pumpkin monster that appears in Halloween. Yes. It's Halloween. Jitaka nodded repeatedly. The festival in the Northern District is very similar to that. It's the right choice to come here. Is that so? Noah scratched his cheek. Could it be that you really like Halloween? Not really, it's just that I heard about it when I was young and thought it was very beautiful. Jitaka said absent-mindedly. After all, the place where I used to live was really boring. Also, I was locked up in a dormitory because I could control people's hearts. I didn't have the chance to participate in such a beautiful event. Then you should enjoy it. Noah shrugged and looked at Ren. Where should we go after this? Ren did not expect Noah to suddenly throw a question at him. After pondering for a while, he looked at Noah. If it's possible, I would like to say hello to Salamandra first. Salamandra? Noah was puzzled. What's that? A community? Yes. Ren nodded. In the Northern District, Salamandra is a very famous community. Although there aren't many members with outstanding talents, they rely on the widespread maintenance of the wyvern bloodline to increase the strength of their organization. Not only do they have many wyvern-type wyverns that dominate the air, they also have many powerful fire lizards and humanoid fire dragons. They have a very strong battle strength. Their base is located in the outer gate of the 54545 sect. It's a 5-digit community with a flaming dragon as its flag. 5-digit? Noah was surprised. Do you know anyone in such a high-class community? Actually, in the past, Salamandra had formed an alliance with our community. Ren's expression became a little gloomy. However, ever since our community suffered a devastating blow and was unable to become no name, Salamandra, unilaterally abandoned the alliance. Until now, we have not contacted each other for 3 years. Is that so? Noah nodded and casually asked. Then you don't resent Salamandra? Instead, you want to greet them? You can't say that I resent them, right? Ren said hesitantly. Our community has already declined. There is no benefit in continuing to associate with us. It's not incomprehensible to break the alliance. Kicking them away as soon as they are no longer of any use proves that all the relationships in the past were only built on benefits. Noah glanced at Ren. There is no reason to trust such a person, and they will not lend us a helping hand at a critical time. If you can break it off, then break it off earlier. Ren was suddenly speechless. Seeing Ren like this, Noah secretly muttered in his heart, he's just a child. Isn't this too strict on him? Just as Noah was reflecting, Black Rabbit's exasperated voice rang out. These problematic children. Hearing Black Rabbit's exasperated voice, Noah and Ren were stunned at the same time. They turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. Then a pair of eyes widened. What a beautiful scenery! That's right. I finally found a scenery that is more beautiful than the night sky in Hakata. In the East District, there is no such scenery at all. Leisurely having such a conversation at the top of a steeple made of stained glass, 16 Nights Retroactive, Gyo Uesuka, and Harai Hiroyuki occupied that place with a look of admiration. Such a conspicuous scene attracted the attention of the surrounding residents. A commotion suddenly occurred. Chapter 1301. What are they doing? They're actually climbing on top of the display. Isn't that too rude? Which community are they from? Where's the military police? Hurry up and tell the military police to catch them. Looking at 16 Knights, Kubo Asuka, and Haruhebu Yaichi climbing to the top of the stained glass tower, the people on the street were pointing at them, causing quite a commotion. It couldn't be helped. Retroactive 16 Knights, Juyuan Flying Bird, and Hurai Tribe Yao were simply too good at picking a location. As mentioned before, in this Fire Dragon Birth ceremony, apart from holding all kinds of bestowment games, there would also be an art exhibition and judging meeting made by the spirits and elves in the North District. At this moment, the stained glass spire occupied by 16 Knights Retrograde, Kubo Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi was one of the handicrafts for the exhibition. Perhaps they had considered the fact that it would take up too much space, which was why the minaret was placed on the street. However, the 3 problem children climbed on top of other people's handicrafts to sightsee. This situation can no longer be described as impolite. If they were not careful and broke the spire, that would be big trouble. But why? Ren was dumbfounded as he shouted. Why did they go there? Not to mention Ren, even the corners of Noah's eyes were twitching. Those guys, they're really a bunch of fearless problem children. Even Noah and Ren were like this. Haidai was even more anxious. You guys hurry up and come down. Haidai shouted in panic. If you break that spire, it won't be as simple as compensation, you might even be kicked out of the ceremony. However, Black Rabbit's loud cry was ignored by 16 Knights, Juyun Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi. They continued to praise the beautiful scenery around them and didn't care at all about the situation below that was becoming more and more chaotic. This isn't good. Ren's face turned green. If this continues, we might really attract the military police who are in charge of maintaining order. At that time, everyone would inevitably be implicated and punished together. The most serious consequence was that they might be banned from participating in the Fire Dragon Birth ceremony and be kicked back to the East District. Haidai also realized this and clenched his fists in excitement. In this instant, the Black Rabbit's head of sky-blue waist-length hair suddenly trembled. From top to bottom, it suddenly turned a pink color. Her long pink hair swayed beautifully in the breeze, sparkling like moonlight, attracting the gazes of everyone around her, revealing expressions of amazement. This change also attracted the attention of 16 Knights, Kuyoshi Asuka, and Haruhibu Yaichi, who were enjoying the scenery on top of the spire. Not good. Haruhibu's mouth opened slightly. Haidai is angry. Haidai was angry. Haidai had the physical characteristic of turning her hair, ears, and tail pink when she used her power or when her emotions changed. Now that Haidai's sky blue waist-length hair turned pink, it meant that this girl was either using her power or a certain emotion in her heart had reached its peak. In this situation, there was no need to explain what emotion caused Haidai's hair to turn pink. Immediately, Haidai trembled and squeezed out a voice from his mouth. "You all of the questions from the group." When Haidai's rage value reached the maximum, Haidai's body crouched and like a cannonball, he shot up into the sky and violently shot towards 16th Knights, Jiuyuanao, and Haruhibu's direction. The price of angering Haidai, this time, I'll let you guys have a taste of it. Seeing Haidai roaring and shooting towards them at an astonishing speed, Jiuyuanao and Haruhibu's hearts skipped a beat. Coming. Without any hesitation, Haruhibu grabbed Jiuyuanao and leaped down with the speed of a cheetah. "What? You want to play hide and seek with me? Haidai?" 16th Knights laughed excitedly and arrogantly. "Interesting. Let's play then." After saying this, 16 Knights reverse shot off in another direction with a speed that was absolutely not inferior to the Black Rabbit's. It was as if he was a bullet that had left the barrel. Even in such a situation, 16 Knights reverse still carried out the style of the Brain faction. The direction he chose was completely opposite to Jiuyuanao and Haruhibu's direction. Haidai, who had rushed up to the steeple, could only land on the steeple. He first glanced at Jiuyuanao and Haruhibu's direction, then at 16th Knights. After a while, he seemed to have made a decision. He turned around and looked at Noah below. "Mr. Noah, please go after Miss Flying Bird and Miss Seiya. I'll leave the troublesome adult child to Haidai." After saying that, the Black Rabbit also turned into a bullet that was shot out of the barrel. Like an arrow that left the bow, it rushed in the direction where 16 Knights disappeared. Wait. Noah only had time to raise his hand towards the steeple before Haidai disappeared. Noah could only withdraw his hand with a speechless expression and let out a helpless sigh. "I haven't agreed yet." Even though that was what he said, Noah could not let Jiuyuanao and Haruhibu continue to mess around. "As expected, I'll only run into all sorts of trouble when I'm with these three. My premonition when I first came to this world is so accurate that it's infuriating. If only I had just left at that time." After saying that, Noah turned into a ray of light and flew towards Jiuyuanao and Haruhibu's direction. He left, yeah. Speaking of which, he's so fast. Which community are they from? Could it be someone from the upper echelons? All of a sudden, the entire street was filled with people talking about it. Among the crowd, Ren stood there in a daze and did not come back to his senses for a long time. At that moment, there was only one thought left in Ren's mind. What should I do? As time passed, the sky was slowly dyed with the color of dusk. The setting sun hung high in the sky, sprinkling countless rays of light onto the earth, dyeing the entire land a fiery red color. In such a fiery red sky, Haruhibu, who was carrying Jiuyuanao, was surrounded by whirlwinds. It was as if he was being carried by a whirlwind as he flew across the sky. Jiuyuanao, who was being carried by Haruhibu, was a little surprised. Haruhibu-san? How can you fly?" Hearing that, Haruhibu was still looking forward, but there was a slight smile on his face. "The White Yaksha has a griffin that can control whirlwinds. I met it in a game of grace and became friends with it." Therefore, Haruhibu Yaichi's life catalog absorbed the griffin's ability, allowing Haruhibu Yaichi to gain the ability to control whirlwinds. So powerful," Jiuyuanao said happily. "If that's the case, we can leave the Black Rabbit behind and go somewhere else to play." However, just as he finished speaking, a voice that was not a smile entered the ears of Jiufei Niao and Haruna Buyao. "If you want to play, then stay here and play with me. Why go somewhere else?" The moment he finished speaking, golden ripples began to appear in the space around Kudo Yukiyoshi and Haruna Buyao. They were like water ripples, appearing one after another. Seeing the golden ripples, Jiuyuanao and Haruhibu Yao were shocked. That is, before Jiyuasuk and Haruhibu Yao could finish their words, silver chains with golden light flowing on their surface suddenly swept out from the golden ripples. They flashed through the air one by one, like agile pythons, circling towards the two girls from all directions. Chapter 1302. Clang, clang, clang. Amidst the clanging sounds of metal clashing against metal, numerous silver chains with different wedges at the front and golden light flowing all over moved nimbly in the air. In an instant, they formed an encirclement net, trapping Kuyoshi and Harai Biao within. Harai Hiroyuki, who was holding Komoto, quickly controlled the whirlwind to stop in the middle of the whistling wind. He floated in the air and looked around. The chains that came out from the golden ripples seemed to form a huge chain cage, trapping Jiwasuke and Kasumi inside. Hovering in the air, Harai Hiroyuki was like a bird locked in a cage made of chains. He didn't know what to do. Under such circumstances, the voice that sounded like a laugh yet not a laugh sounded once again. If that's the case, you won't be able to escape, right? Hearing this voice, Kuyoshi and Harai Biao raised their heads at the same time and looked in front of them. There, Noah seemed to be descending from the heavens. With a slow speed, he floated down bit by bit until he was at the same height as Kuyoshi Asuka and Harai Biao. In the eyes of Kyu and Harai Biao, who had become caged birds, that figure was simply synonymous with the Demon King. In fact, even though Noah wasn't like the Demon King in the box court who could use his authority as the organizer to force others into his game of bestowment, Kuyoshi and Haruhibuyaichi were well aware of how frightening Noah was. They knew that Noah was definitely much more difficult to deal with than the Demon King. As for why, the reason was very simple. Even if it was a Demon King, if someone else found a way to defeat him, he could only die with regret. However, Noah, who had endless blessings and all of them were of the Godhead level, could use all kinds of blessings to deal with all kinds of situations. In other words, the man named Noah had no weaknesses. No matter what kind of methods his opponent used, this man would always be able to deal with them with endless gifts. He could even specifically target his opponent's weakness and take out the corresponding weapons and tools. Having such a person as an opponent was even worse than the Demon King. If it was 16 knights, perhaps he could use brute force to deal with the enemy. But Kuyoshi and Harai Biao didn't have the strength to fight against 16 knights. At least not now. Seeing Noah descending from the sky, Kuyoshi and Harai Biao bit their lips at the same time and looked at Noah with resentment and regret. I didn't expect there to be a traitor here. Betraying one's companions is an eternal sin. Seeing Kyuki Asuka and Haruhibuyaichi talking as if everything was Noah's fault, Noah rolled his eyes. Sorry, I don't think I'm a traitor, he said. You call this not betraying me? Jiwon Bird glared at Noah and said loudly, Aren't we companions? In the sense of community, we are indeed companions. Noah's mouth twitched. But if you're referring to the companions who prank and cause trouble, then I'm sorry, but please don't count me in. Harai Biao puffed up his cheeks. You traitor! Am I really the villain now? Noah rubbed his forehead, then looked up and said weakly. Forget it, a villain is a villain then. Then, as a villain, I'll say something as usual. Noah looked at Harai Biao and smiled. If you surrender now, I'll leave you with a complete corpse. No! Harai Biao refused at the same time. Surrender to you? Harai Biao said righteously. Then I'd rather die. We won't give up. Harai Biao looked like a righteous comrade and stared at Noah. In order to make fun of Black Rabbit, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we'll do it. Hearing this, Noah finally couldn't help but complain. Aren't your lives too worthless? The moment he finished speaking, a whirlwind suddenly shook and turned into a violent storm, sweeping toward Noah. Harai Biao took advantage of the time when Noah was complaining and suddenly released a whirlwind, making the strong whirlwind like an invisible wave, violently rushing toward him. You want to attack? Who's the villain? Noah shouted as if he couldn't stand it anymore, but his actions weren't slow at all. He turned around and kicked the whirlwind violently. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled explosion, the invisible whirlwind was directly crushed by Noah's kick, scattering into a gentle breeze that spread in all directions. However, at this moment, a small bead suddenly shot over from the front and was imprinted in the eyes of Noah, who had kicked the whirlwind into smithereens. Seeing that bead, Noah narrowed his eyes and retreated quickly without any hesitation. Almost at the same time, Huraibuyao's cold voice sounded. Explode! Under the command of the awe-inspiring voice, the gift of simulated godhood was bestowed upon the small bead. When they decided to participate in the fire dragon's birth ceremony, Huraibuyao bought some gifts in the name of community. Those gifts, for ordinary people, could at most make life slightly more convenient. For example, beads that could emit fire, branches that could produce water, and so on. These were the lowest gifts, and Huraibuyao bought a lot of them. And these gifts were all prepared for Huraibuyao. Even if it could only make life slightly more convenient, in the hands of Huraibuyao who could use language to give simulated divinity, it would transform into a powerful gift. In order to obtain a big harvest in the fire dragon's birth ceremony, Huraibuyao prepared these gifts for Huraibuyao, hoping that Huraibuyao could win the gift game and use the gifts to develop the community. Huraibuyao naturally didn't reject these gifts in consideration of the community. Now, the bead that Huraibuyao threw out was a gift that could cause a small explosion. As a result, after being given the simulated divinity, the ordinary bead suddenly flashed with a dazzling light, and the soul inside suddenly expanded. In the next moment, an astonishing explosion occurred in the entire cage made of chains, setting off tumbling waves of fire that dyed the sky red. Huraibuyao, who was holding Huraibuyao, controlled the whirlwind to blow away the incoming waves of fire while retreating continuously. The tip of his nose was dripping with cold sweat. "Fei, Buyao, aren't you going too far? What can I do? I didn't know that the power of the simulated divinity would reach such a level." Huraibuyao was also a little flustered, but her strong self-esteem made her pretend to be calm. "But if the opponent is that man, this level of power won't be a problem." Huraibuyao nodded and agreed with Huraibuyao's words. With Noah's strength, this level of power wouldn't be a problem. "So, we should hurry and escape from here." Before Hurai Hiroyuki could finish his sentence, the familiar voice sounded again. "Escape? You have to be able to escape first." With such a voice, a figure rushed out like a gust of wind from the rolling waves of fire in front of him. He directly blew away the waves of fire and violently rushed to the front of Hurai Hiroyuki, who was holding Koyuki Hiroyuki. Huraibuyao was shocked, and just as he was about to move, Noah's figure had already flashed in front of him. Almost reflexively, Huraibuyao kicked at Noah, who had flashed in front of him, bringing with it a whistling sound. In response, Noah just moved his body sideways and flashed behind Huraibuyao, avoiding the girl's fierce kick. It should be mentioned here. Noah's following actions were completely subconscious and not intentional. Noah raised one hand and slapped Huraibuyao's delicate butt. "Pa!" When the crisp sound was heard, the surroundings became quiet. Chapter 1303. Silence. There was a deathly silence. The entire space, which had been filled with the smell of gunpowder because of the shocking explosion, instantly quieted down and was replaced by a strange atmosphere. Feeling the pain from his buttocks, Hurai Hiroyuki's entire body stiffened, and even his mouth was slightly open. Obviously, Noah's slap had stunned Hurai Hiroyuki. Noah, who had flashed behind Hurai Hiroyuki and slapped his buttocks heavily, was also frozen in place. His palm simply stayed on Hurai Hiroyuki's buttocks due to excessive shock, and he did not react for a long time. Hurai Hiroyuki, who had lived to this day for a full 14 years, had never let anyone touch his buttocks. Now, in a mischievous fight, he was hit hard by a companion of the opposite sex. It would be strange if he could react. As a result, Hurai Hiroyuki was stunned for a long time before he slowly turned his head and looked at Noah, who was floating behind him. His pretty face was still as emotionless and quiet as before, but there was a faint blush on his pink cheeks. As for Hurai Hiroyuki's eyes, he was completely in disbelief. She couldn't believe that she had been slapped on the butt by Noah in such a situation. Facing Hurai Hiroyuki's eyes full of disbelief, Noah only felt his head go numb, and then he realized that his hand, which was still on Hurai Hiroyuki's buttocks, was continuously giving him a wonderful touch. Hurai Hiroyuki was actually wearing slightly thick shorts, and a long sleeveless shirt that covered his buttocks, so Noah could put his hand on it through several layers of cloth, but a girl's body was just so soft. Even though there were several layers of cloth, Noah could still feel a trace of wonderful touch. However, this wonderful touch finally caused Noah to react. He hurriedly withdrew his hand and stuttered, which was a rare sight. I didn't do it on purpose. Hearing this, Haruhibuyaichi looked straight at Noah. There was no change in his expression, but his cheeks were still a little red. After a while, Noah heard Haruhibu's whisper. It was so soft that it could be blown away by a gust of wind. Noah's heart was suddenly filled with an indescribable emotion. That kind of emotion was called embarrassment. It must be mentioned here again that Noah really didn't do it on purpose. He just casually slapped it down. After all, with Hurai Hiroyuki's strength, it was impossible for him to make Noah use his full strength. In addition, this kind of playful fight made Noah feel a little dispirited. That was why he casually slapped it down. Who would have thought that this shot would be so accurate? So, Noah really didn't do it on purpose. However, it was useless to explain anything now. This was because even the distant bird looked at Noah with disdain as if it was looking at an idiot. So you're such a frivolous person? Noah choked and was almost speechless. At this time, Haruhibuyaichi had already taken Juhibuyaichi and manipulated the whirlwind to distance themselves from Noah. Then, he looked at Noah and narrowed his eyes. Are you satisfied now? Can you let us go now? Noah's mouth twitched. What kind of words was that? Why did it sound like Noah purposely chased after these two girls just to touch Haruhibuyaichi's butt? This was definitely a big misunderstanding. In the end, isn't this a boring prank made by you two? Noah could only swallow his anger and looked at Juhibuyaichi and Haruhibuyaichi's eyes. Now obediently come back with me or else. Haruhibuyaichi blinked as if he wanted to see Noah's thoughts. He looked straight at Noah. Or else, are you going to continue touching me? Are you still planning to do that? Juhibuyaichi looked at Noah with more and more contempt. If that's the case, then you'll have to go through me first. After saying that, Juhibuyaichi held a few different colored beads in her hand. Originally, Juhibuyaichi didn't want to waste the gifts that she was going to use during the fire dragon's birth ceremony. However, if Noah wanted to continue doing bad things to Haruhibuyaichi, then Juhibuyaichi wouldn't continue hiding them. In any case, these blessings were only of a very common level. With No Name's current financial ability, he could more or less afford to waste them. Still, Jiyuan Fei Niao did not feel that these gifts could do anything to Noah after his might light simulated the bestowment of divinity. Being guarded by Juhibuyaichi and Haruhibuyaichi, Noah opened and closed his mouth. In the end, he gave up and said that sentence. Ah, that's right. If you don't want to surrender here, I'll beat each of you 10 times when I catch you. Now, let alone Haruhibuyaichi, even Juhibuyaichi couldn't stay calm. Even if it was a problem child, as long as it was a proper girl, she wouldn't want to be spanked by someone of the opposite sex. Under such circumstances, Juhibuyaichi and Haruhibuyaichi, who didn't want to retreat, finally started to retreat. Hey, Juhibuyaichi. Haruhibuyaichi said. Why don't we surrender? It was the first time in history that Haruhibuyaichi, who was quiet on the outside and stubborn on the inside, was willing to surrender. However, Juhibuyaichi also had the same idea. Unfortunately, Ancient Flying Bird's excessive pride caused it to struggle a little. Don't give up so easily, Haruhibu-san. Juhibuyaichi looked at Noah, who had an expression of desperation and stammered. Perhaps, we can find a chance to escape. Who knows? In other words, Juhibuyaichi intends to continue the challenge, right? Haruhibuyaichi reminded her out of kindness. If you're caught, you'll be spanked 10 times. Juhibuyaichi's courage withered. Even Haruhibuyaioi was afraid of the consequences, not to mention the ancient birds that had been summoned to Hakata from the conservative Showa era. If Juhibuyaichi was the one who was spanked by Noah in such a shameful place, she might even think of making Noah take responsibility. Thinking of this, Juhibuyaichi became timid. Even if it's Noah, he wouldn't be so cruel, right? Juhibu Yachi's voice revealed her lack of confidence. Although he treated you like that just now, it should be an unconscious action. Noah wouldn't do such a thing. Perhaps? Haruhibu Yachi said in a low voice. But I feel that compared to this, Noah is more of a man of his words. Do you want to try, Juhibu? Juhibu Yachi finally fell silent. After a while, the two girls cast resentful gazes at Noah at the same time. I admit defeat this time. Although I'm unwilling, I don't want to be spanked again. Saying this, Juhibu Yachi and Haruhibu Yachi finally chose to surrender. It was at this moment that something unexpected happened. That's it. Following such a voice, shadows suddenly flew over from all directions, surrounding Noah, Komodo Asaka, and Haruhibu Masaaki's group of people in the chain cage. Noah, Juhibu Yachi, and Haruhibu Yachi were all stunned, then raised their heads and looked at their surroundings. In an instant, the three of them saw it. Outside the cage made of chains, there were beasts flapping their wings and hovering in the air, surrounding the entire chain cage. Those beasts flapping their wings were xenomorphs that looked like pterosaurs, but their bodies were covered with scales like lizards. In the hands of these pterosaurs, there was a flag with a flaming dragon pattern. A pterosaur that had absolute control of the air. A community with a flaming dragon pattern as its flag. These were all characteristics that Noah had heard of not long ago. And it was from Ren. Salamandra. Chapter 1304. Stratum Dominator. This title seemed to refer to every stratum dominator in the box court, but in fact, it was the guardian of the box court's order. It was also a system set up to promote the growth of the lower-level community. In the east, south, west, and north, there were stratum dominators in each of the four regions. For example, the stratum dominator in the east was a star spirit and a god. In the past, it was the white yaksha who used to be a demon king in the double digits. Stratum dominators like the white yaksha had a lot of responsibilities. The most important task was to be responsible for the division and transfer of land in the box court, or to hold a gift game to test whether the lower-level community was qualified to move to a higher stratum, and so on. And when the natural disaster that disturbed the order, which was the demon king of the box court, appeared, as the guardian of order, the stratum dominators had the obligation to be the first to fight. It could be said that the stratum dominators existed to maintain the peace and order of the box court. For this reason, the stratum dominators were given all kinds of rights. Among them, there was the authority of the organizer like the demon king. However, there was not only one stratum dominator in each region. For example, the stratum dominators in the north were held by the leaders of multiple communities. The leader of the community called Salamandra was one of the stratum dominators in the north. This community had formed an alliance with No Name in the past, but after No Name met with misfortune, it unilaterally abandoned the alliance. Its base was located in the 54545 outer gate of the north. In the past, Salamandra was once a 4-digit community. However, since No Name met with misfortune 3 years ago, the body of the former leader of Salamandra began to have problems. Under the influence of the internal dispute over the successor, it was finally demoted to 5 digits. It must be known that although there was only a difference of one stratum between a 4-digit and a 5-digit number, the difference between the stratum was like heaven and earth. The box court that was divided into 7 stratums was divided into upper, middle, and lower stratum according to the difference in stratum and level. Among them, 6-digit and 7-digit numbers were divided into the lower stratum, 5-digit numbers were divided into the middle stratum, and only 1-digit, 2-digit, 3-digit, and 4-digit numbers were divided into the upper stratum. Of course, the difference between stratums was also very big. However, the difference between the upper, middle, and lower levels could be described as the difference between heaven and earth. If it wasn't for the fact that the requirement to become a tier dominator was only 5 digits, Salamandra might have been given a bye. Even so, Salamandra was still one of the top communities in the Northern District. In terms of influence and strength, Salamandra was even above Perseus. This time, at the lowest level of the Northern District, the barrier between the Eastern and Northern Districts One of the organizers of the fire dragon birth ceremony was Salamandra. During this time, in order to maintain the security of the festival, Salamandra's military police had been stationed outside the 4 Million Gate, waiting for action at any time. After 16 nights retrograde, Kyuka Asaka and Haruhito Masaaki occupied the art pieces of the festival to enjoy the scenery. The military police of Salamandra were alerted. After that, Kyuka Asaka used the aura of might to imitate the godhood in her hands, causing a huge explosion. In this way, it was impossible not to attract the attention of Salamandra's military police. Thus, under the escort of Salamandra's military police, Noah, Kyuka Asaka, and Haruhito Masaaki were sent to the headquarters of the fire dragon birth ceremony. If Noah's group wanted to resist, then even if it was Salamandra's military police, with Noah holding the line, they wouldn't be able to do anything to Kyuka Asaka and Haruhito Masaaki. However, their goal this time wasn't to start a war, but to participate in the various gift games held in the Northern District and win all kinds of gifts as prizes. In order to not lose the qualifications to participate in the games, Noah, Kyuka Asaka, and Haruhito Masaaki were taken away without any resistance and brought to the headquarters of the fire dragon birth ceremony. However, here, Noah's group met some unexpected people. I was wondering who had the guts to cause trouble at the ceremony held jointly by the Northern and Eastern districts. While saying this, Byakuya Yakusha, who was wearing a kimono and holding a paper fan with 2 Valkyries looking at each other, looked at Noah, Kyuka Asaka, and Haruhito Masaaki with an unpleasant expression. "So it's you, Byakuya Yakusha?" Kyuka Asaka was startled at first, then she was surprised. "Why you here? Is it strange that I'm here?" Byakuya Yakusha became even more annoyed. As I said, this ceremony is held jointly by the Northern and Eastern districts. As the ruler of the Eastern district, it would be strange if I didn't come, right? Speaking of this, Byakuya Yakusha seemed to have remembered something and looked at Noah with dissatisfaction. "Undoubtedly, I was the one who sent you the invitation, but you didn't even come to visit me and came to the Northern District. Isn't that a bit rude? It can't be helped." Noah crossed his arms and glanced at Byakuya Yakusha. "We're here to enjoy the ceremony, not to get involved in unnecessary trouble." "What do you mean?" Byakuya Yakusha frowned, his face tensed up, and said very seriously, "Do I look like I'm going to cause trouble for you?" Noah didn't answer immediately, but stared at Byakuya Yakusha and said without blinking, "Don't tell me you don't have any trouble to throw at us?" As early as the beginning, Noah and 16 Knights discovered that this fire dragon birth ceremony was definitely not as simple as a simple ceremony. There must be some deeper problems hidden in it. In order not to get involved in this mess, Noah didn't want to greet Byakuya Yakusha and brought the members of the community to the Northern District without saying a word. If there was nothing, with Byakuya Yakusha's personality, he definitely wouldn't care about such a small problem. But now, since Byakuya Yakusha specially brought up this matter, it proved that Noah's concerns were not wrong. Under such circumstances, Byakuya Yakusha also understood that his thoughts had been seen through. His tense face slowly relaxed, and he spread his hands helplessly. "Well, if you can't even guess something of this level, then you can't use the slogan, 'Down with the Demon King,' as the purpose of the community." As soon as he said this, a somewhat heavy and extremely stern voice sounded. "It's just arrogant words used by nameless people in the lower class to decorate themselves. Are the rulers of the Eastern District so naive to believe such words?" The sudden cynicism and ridicule changed the atmosphere of the entire space. Noah narrowed his eyes slightly, raised his head, and looked forward. He saw a group of people walking in an orderly manner in the corridor in front of the hall. It was a group of soldiers who looked like lizards and a group of guards with slightly darker skin. 2 people led the group. One of them was a stern-looking man with antlers on his head. The cynicism just now came from this person. The other was a girl about 11 or 12 years old. She was a young girl with bright red hair tied to her head. She wore a crown made of dragon horns and a brightly colored dress that made her look like a dancer. This group of people came in front of Noah and the others together and stopped not far in front of Noah and the others. "Let me introduce you." The first to break the silence was Byakuya Yakusha. He pointed at the man with the paper fan in his hand and said, Mandela Telderek, the trusted aide of the leader of the 5-digit community, Salamandra, in the Northern District. He is also the elder brother of the current leader. With that, Byakuya Yaksha pointed at the young girl about 11 or 12 years old. This is the current leader of Salamandra, Sandora Telderek. Chapter 1305. Under Byakuya's introduction, Noah, Kubo Asaka, and Haruhibe Masaaki's gazes all fell on Shadora, brazenly sizing her up. After all, including Noah, no one thought that the leader of Salamandra, one of the rulers of the North District, would be such a young child. However, Byakuya, the ruler of the East District, looked even younger than Shadora. But in reality, this former demon king had lived longer than anyone else. Therefore, it was very likely that this girl named Shadora was not as young as she appeared to be. That was not necessarily the case. Only Noah could be sure that Shadora was different from Byakuya. She should be the type that looked exactly the same as her actual age. As for why, Noah could detect a trace of nervousness from the girl named Shadora's eyes. Even so, Shadora still forced herself to remain calm and greeted Noah's group with a gentle and generous smile. Hello everyone from No Name. I am Shadora from Salamandra. I am very happy to be able to see my former allies. Former allies? Jio Yuao was slightly startled. Former allies? Haruhibe Masaaki was also somewhat confused. What? You don't know? Byakuya said in surprise. Before your community was attacked by the Demon King, you had formed an alliance with Salamandra. Didn't Kurorbi tell you? Jio Yuao and Haruhibe Masaaki's eyes widened in surprise. The two girls really didn't know about this. However, this wasn't something that was worth Jio Yuao and Haruhibe Masaaki's concern. Former allies? Haruhibe Masaaki tilted his head thoughtfully. In other words, that alliance has been cancelled? As soon as this sentence was said, the atmosphere suddenly became a bit dangerous. Because, other than Jio Yuao and Haruhibe Masaaki, everyone else knew the secret. So, Noah spilled the beans without holding anything back. No Name and Salamandra's alliance was unilaterally abolished by Salamandra after No Name was attacked by the Demon King. Jio Yuao and Haruhibe Masaaki's expression suddenly changed. Unilaterally? Jio Yuao glanced at Shadora and Mandela, then looked away as if she wasn't interested. That's really a pity. Although that was what she said, whether it was Noah, Jio Yuao, or Haruhibe Masaaki, none of them showed any pity. This made the expression of Salamandra's members become a bit indescribable. Especially Shadora, although she didn't show anything on the surface, deep in her eyes faintly showed that she didn't know what to do with her feelings. Only Mandela, as if it was a matter of course. Right? Continuing to maintain the alliance with No Name will only lower the prestige and reputation of Salamandra. Abandoning the alliance is the right choice. With just one sentence, the originally sinister atmosphere suddenly became even worse. Brother Mandela, Shadora quickly said to Mandela. No matter what, we did unilaterally break the alliance. If we still take it as a matter of course, it's against etiquette. Compared to etiquette, reputation is more important. Mandela didn't allow for any explanation and looked at Noah's group with a sharp gaze. As the leader of Salamandra, one of the rulers of the Northern District, you shouldn't have come into contact with nameless people, let alone invite them to participate in your birth ceremony. Hearing Mandela's words, Jio Yuao and Haruhibe Masaaki's eyes showed traces of anger. Although Jio Yuao and Haruhibe Masaaki weren't people who would care about other people's provocation, if they were provoked again and again, they wouldn't be problem children if they didn't get angry. Only Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Shadora. Birth ceremony. So that's what it is? Originally, Noah had some doubts about Shadora being the leader of Salamandra. After all, with Shadora's age, even if she became the leader of Salamandra, it wouldn't have been long. From the looks of it, Shadora had only become the leader of Salamandra recently. The so-called birth of the fire dragon should be referring to Shadora becoming the leader of Salamandra and becoming one of the rulers of the Northern District. It seemed that the fire dragon birth ceremony was a ceremony for Shadora to become the leader of Salamandra and become one of the rulers of the northern district. It was a ceremony to let Shadora become the eyes of the people. But if this was the case, then another question arose. Since it was the birth ceremony of one of the rulers of the northern district, why would it be held together with the eastern district? Weren't there other rulers of the northern district? Logically speaking, it should be held together with them. That would make sense, right? In an instant, many thoughts flashed through Noah's mind. However, it only lasted for an instant. Mandela, who didn't know the many thoughts that flashed through Noah's mind in a short moment, could only see Noah sizing up Shadora with a scrutinizing gaze with an angry expression. "You're just a nobody, you're not allowed to look at Shadora like that." With a furious roar, Mandela suddenly pulled out the long sword at his waist and slashed at Noah's head with a tearing sound. Juyuan Asaka and Kasuga Hikari were shocked. This was because there was no mercy in this sword strike at all. If this attack hit, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. However, Noah looked at the sword that was slashing toward him calmly. His expression did not change at all. Ding! The next moment, a crisp sound rang out. It was the sound of two fingers suddenly pinching the long sword that was slashing towards him, causing it to stop in midair. Mandela's gaze suddenly froze. Noah, who pinched the long sword with two fingers, glanced at the sharp blade that was only 2 centimeters away from his head, then looked up and looked at Mandela. "I heard that there aren't many members with outstanding talents in Salamandra, but they rely on the widespread maintenance of the Viper bloodline to increase the strength of the organization. Among them, not only are there pterosaur vipers who dominate the air, but there are also many fire lizards and humanoid fire dragons. Therefore, they have a huge combat power." After saying that, Noah gradually tightened his grip on the long sword with his 2 fingers. In other words, you rely on the human wave tactic, not individual elites. If you want to find trouble, gather all your people first. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah's fingers suddenly tightened. Clang! With a crisp sound, the long sword in Mandela's hand was directly broken by Noah's 2 fingers. Mandela, who suddenly lost his target, staggered back 2 steps. "Lord Mandela." The members of Salamandra were shocked, then they all showed fierce expressions, pulled out the weapons at their waists, and rushed in the direction of Noah's group. Only then did Shadora realize what was going on. She looked anxious. But there was one person who spoke faster than Shadora. Facing the charging members of Salamandra, Juyuan Fei Niao let out a shout. "Stop!" The words that carried power turned into ripples and drilled into the bodies of the members of Salamandra, making these people who were much weaker than Jiao Fei Niao involuntarily stop. At this time, Hurai Biao suddenly stepped forward. "Get out of the way!" A violent whirlwind shook Hurai Biao's body. Bang! One by one, the members of Salamandra were sent flying. Chapter 1306. Bang! The violent wind was like a shockwave, with Haruhibu as the center. It exploded in all directions and sent the members of Salamandra who were charging towards Noah flying. Suddenly, the lizard men like fire lizards and dark-skinned people were like large pieces of trash. They were either heavily smashed into the wall or the ground. Some even directly hit the furniture in the hall, the luxurious furniture scattered. In less than 10 seconds, more than 20 members of Salamandra were all on the ground, making a series of painful groans. What? Mandela looked around at the members of Salamandra, and then looked at Jioyuki and Haruhibu. The look in his eyes completely changed. A mere community of no name actually managed to defeat the elite troops of Salamandra in an instant with just 2 people? Elite forces, huh? Jioyuki looked condescendingly at the members of Salamandra who were lying on the ground and struggling to get up, then showed a very elegant smile. If these are the elites of Salamandra, then no wonder this 5-digit community needs to rely on numbers to make up for it. I feel the same. Haruhibu stepped back and nodded expressionlessly. My rabbit is much more powerful than the dragons and lizards here. That's what he said, but in fact, in terms of strength, Black Rabbit was above Jioyuki and Haruhibu. If even Jioyuki and Haruhibu couldn't deal with it, Then Salamandra naturally couldn't deal with Black Rabbit, who was a noble of Hakata. So, to be precise, Herhibu's words weren't wrong. It's just that, in other people's ears, it was quite harsh. Do. Mandela showed a violent expression. You guys, seeing this, Shadora finally couldn't stand it anymore. Listen. Shadora was a little angry. If you continue to be rude to my guest, I'll really get angry. What are you talking about? Shadora. Mandela pointed at Noah's group. These people attacked at your birth ceremony and even disrupted the order of the ceremony, so they were brought here. How can you treat these guys as guests? That's enough, Mandela. Byakuya also couldn't help but say. They were invited by me. Isn't it rude for you to hit my guests? In other words, the ruler of the East District is prepared to protect these people? Mandela didn't back down and said this to Byakuya mockingly. Are you becoming more and more disgraceful? You're the strongest ruler of the East District. As his voice fell, a terrifying pressure suddenly spread throughout the entire hall. Under that terrifying pressure, including the members of Salamandra who were struggling to get up from the ground, Shadora, Mandela, Kudo Asaka, and Haruhi Masaaki all felt their shoulders become heavy, and their bodies became heavy. The only one who could remain calm was Noah. Even so, Noah still looked at Byakuya with a dignified expression. There, Byakuya spread out the paper fan with the flag of the two goddesses, covering half of his face, but his eyes were piercing and cold as ice. You keep saying that it's just no name, but you let the elites of Salamandra take action against a no name. After being defeated, you keep on pestering him. Who's the one who's losing more and more of their dignity? Mandela? Mandela's expression changed. However, Byakuya's next words made Mandela's heart sink. Moreover, do you think I'm protecting my guests? Byakuya looked at Mandela coldly. Based on your words, you are no match for them. If this continues, the one who will suffer in the end will only be Salamandra. I only spoke up because I didn't want to embarrass Shadora. Or, Mandela, do you want to smear Shadora's reputation? Tise. Mandela was speechless. Mandela was not a fool. Mandela understood that Noah, Jio Yuasuke, and Haruhito Masaaki's group were not easy to deal with. If they continued to pester them, unless they really mobilized all of Salamandra's troops, it would be impossible to do anything to Noah's group. But if that happened, it would inevitably cause chaos in the entire Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. At that time, as the protagonist of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, Shadora would really lose face. And in order to deal with No Name, who didn't even have a flag or a name, mobilizing a large force like this would definitely affect Salamandra's prestige and reputation. It was just like what Byakuya said. If this continued, Salamandra would only be at a disadvantage. Thinking of this, Mandela calmed down. Perhaps to give Mandela a way out, Shadora gave an extremely serious order. This matter ends here, don't cause any more trouble. Yes. Mandela closed his eyes. After a while, he calmly responded. The sinister atmosphere that permeated the air finally eased a little. However, at this time, outside, a person rushed in a panic. Not good. Don't make a ruckus. Mandela looked at the panicking person. What happened? Yes. The person hurriedly said. Someone destroyed the buildings on the street, causing panic on the street. What? Mandela's gaze sharpened. Who did it? There are only two of them, the person said. One of them seems to be you two of the Hakata nobility. When this sentence spread throughout the hall, Noah, Jio Yuasuke, Haruhito Masaaki, and Byakuya's group all froze and lost their ability to react. So about an hour later, No Name walked out of the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. As the leader, Rin looked like he was about to cry and said, It's only the first day, and everyone has already caused such a big commotion. How are we going to live the rest of the days? I'm sorry, young Master Ren. Hei-Tu's rabbit ears drooped down, and then looked to the side. When he saw Reverse 16 Knights, Jio Yuasuke, and Haruhito Masaaki's group all looking so heartless, he also looked like he was about to cry. How are we going to live the rest of the days? After Noah, Jio Yuasuke, and Haruhito Masaaki caused a huge explosion in the air and caused a commotion. Reverse 16 Knights and Hei 2, who were chasing each other, also destroyed a building, causing panic on the street. Under such circumstances, Mandela, who had finally chosen to back down, exploded in anger and repeatedly said that he wanted to chase No Name out of the North District. And the three problem children were obviously not people who would back down. In the end, both sides left on bad terms. After knowing the whole story, it was not surprising that Renhei, who came later, would have such a reaction. Looking at the dejected Hei 2 and Ren, and then looking at the heartless reverse 16 Knights, Jio Yuasuke, and Haruhito Masaaki, Noah smiled bitterly and looked at the operation headquarters behind him. Reverse 16 Knights turned his head and looked at Noah. What's wrong? Nothing. Noah shook his head. I just feel that if this farce ends here, and everything goes smoothly, then it'll be good. Is that so? Reverse 16 Knights suddenly smiled. I'm looking forward to interesting developments. As if to confirm Reverse 16 Knights' words, the sky gradually turned dark, revealing a feeling of a storm. Night fell at this moment. Chapter 1307. After that, Jio Yuki and Hirai Buyao claimed that because of Noah, they didn't get to enjoy the festival at all. They stubbornly said that they wanted to continue strolling around the streets. Then, they pulled the black rabbit and disappeared without a trace. Although the black rabbit was following them, Noah was very doubtful about whether the black rabbit could stop the two problem children when they were in trouble. He took out the gift card and materialized Letitia. He then caught up with Kyuyuki Asuke and Kasuga Hibiya. As a result, when the sky turned dark, only Noah, 16 Knights, and Ren, the three male compatriots, were left. Looking at the beautiful night sky with some stars, Noah turned his gaze to Ren. So, where are we going now? 16 Knights Reversal also turned his gaze to Ren. Don't tell me you're going to do something as boring as looking for a hotel? Then I might as well go with those young ladies and wander around, okay? Ren, you stammered. Actually, before we left Salamandra, Lord White Yaksha told me to go to the Thousand Eyes branch first. Noah raised his eyebrows. Is there a branch of Thousand Eyes here? Yes. Ren nodded. Although in the North District, Thousand Eyes isn't in every outer door like the East District, there is still a branch of Thousand Eyes at the border between the East and North District. Did White Yaksha tell us to go there? Reverse 16 Knights rubbed his chin. After a while, he revealed an eager smile. It seems that something interesting must have happened. It's interesting to you, but not to us. Noah sighed and then asked Ren. Since White Yaksha told us to go there, it must be related to the inside story of why the East District and North District cooperated to hold the festival. If we follow White Yaksha's instructions, we have to get involved in this mess. Ren, you have to think carefully before making a decision. Ren pondered for a while. After a while, he looked up with a serious expression. No matter what, I think it's better to talk to Lord White Yaksha. Maybe it's something beneficial to us. Beneficial? Noah rubbed his temples. But I think it's more likely to disappoint you. Noah's words made 16 Knights Reversal and Ren focus on Noah. Something that disappoints me? Ren hesitated and then said with uncertainty. Mr. Noah, do you already know what Lord White Yaksha is going to say? What? 16 Knights Reversal's mouth slightly raised. Could it be that you've made some discoveries as well? Since you said, also, it means that you have also made some discoveries, right? Noah glanced at 16 Knights, who was in reverse. Let me guess, did you think of the same thing as me? For example? 16 Knights Reversal did not want to be outdone and showed a provocative smile. The inside story of why the East and North Districts are cooperating to hold the ceremony? So you've noticed it too. Noah scratched his cheek. But you're right. After seeing the leader of Salamandra and connecting it to the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, it's not hard to guess the inside story. Seeing that Noah and 16 Knights Reversal were having a conversation that he could not understand, Ren quickly spoke. Mr. Noah, Mr. 16 Knights Reversal, did you really find something? Didn't you find it? Young Master Xiaobudian? 16 Knights Reversal said. Undoubtedly, it's a ceremony for the new ruler of the North Districts to announce his appointment. The other rulers of the North Districts are nowhere to be seen. Instead, the ruler of the East Districts, White Yaksha, came to help the other party hold the birth ceremony. This is enough to explain everything, right? Hearing that, Ren frowned. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and looked up. Could it be that because the other rulers of the North Districts are not cooperating, Shadora has no choice but to seek help from the ruler of the East Districts? To be more precise, not only are the other rulers of the North Districts not cooperating with the birth ceremony of the child named Shadora, but they also seem to be dissatisfied with the fact that Shadora has become the ruler of the North Districts. That's why White Yaksha intervened, right? Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. After all, the new ruler of the North Districts is only an 11-year-old child. It's only natural that others would look down on and be dissatisfied, right? It's fine if it's just disdain and dissatisfaction. 16 Knights Reversal shrugged. The worst thing is that the leader of Salamandra is an 11-year-old child. This matter in itself has caused many of the rulers of the other classes in the Northern District to feel enmity towards them. They are preparing to do something during this fire dragon's birth ceremony. Who knows? Ren was shocked. In other words, the rulers of the North Districts might attack this place during the fire dragon's birth ceremony? It's unlikely to be an attack. After all, they are rulers of the Order Guardians. It's impossible for them to attack openly. The biggest possibility is that it will involve the political issues between the rulers of the North Districts, right? Noah shook his head. If White Yaksha wants us to get involved in the political issues of the North Districts, then I still think it's best that we don't get involved in this mess. I think so too. 16 Knights Reversal raised his hand with a bored expression. It's fine if it's something else, but political disputes are really boring. If it's something like that, I don't want to get involved. Ren fell silent at once, his face full of uncertainty. Noah and 16 Knights Reversal didn't speak again. Instead, they quietly waited for the leader of the community to make a decision. Although compared to Ren, be it Noah or 16 Knights Reversal, they were more like the center of the community, Ren was still the leader. Therefore, Noah and 16 Knights Reversal didn't plan on overstepping their authority and left the decision to Ren. I still think we should listen to what Lord White Yaksha has to say. After an unknown period of time, Ren finally made a decision. Firstly, Lord White Yaksha has taken care of us in the past. It won't be good if we cut off all ties with him. Secondly, even if it involves the political power of the North Districts, if the other party can pay us a reasonable reward, we still have to intervene when it's time. After all, our community doesn't have many choices to choose from. Ren looked at Noah and the 16 Knights of Reversal. Grasping every opportunity to become stronger is what we should be doing right now. That's what I think. Ren's words made Noah and 16 Knights Reversal look at each other and laugh at the same time. Upon seeing this, Ren understood. Noah and 16 Knights Reversal agreed with his decision. North District's 400000 Outer Gate, Thousand Eyes Branch. Noah, 16 Knights Reversal, and Ren were invited into the shop by the shop assistant. As if they were well served, they ate a big meal and soaked in the hot spring. Finally, they each wore a bathrobe and came to the reception room. When Noah and the others came to the reception room, there were two other people in the reception room besides White Yaksha. Seeing these two people, whether it was Noah or 16 Knights, both of them were slightly stunned, and they stood up in surprise. Ren exclaimed in astonishment, "Shadora?" Apart from White Yaksha, there were also Shadora and Mandela. "Everyone, we meet again." It was completely different from during the day. At this moment, Shadora's face had an innocent expression that was completely consistent with her age. "I hope you don't take what happened during the day to heart." White Yaksha also said this with a serious expression. "Actually, there's something we hope to discuss with you." Chapter 1308. Actually, there's something we want to discuss with you. With that said, White Yaksha placed a letter on the table, exposing the contents of the letter to Noah, 16 Knights Reversal, and Ren. The three of them subconsciously looked at the letter on the table. There was only one sentence written on the letter. A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony. When this sentence was imprinted in Noah and 16 Knights' eyes, their pupils constricted at the same time. Demon king? A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony? Psst. Ren's eyes widened and he started to panic. It can't be, right? A demon king will attack the fire dragon's birth ceremony? Calm down, young Master Tiny. 16 Knights' reversal pressed down on Ren's shoulder, but his gaze turned sharp as he swept his gaze towards White Yaksha. This shouldn't be a joke, right? If anyone uses this kind of joke on me, I'll definitely let them know that they can't make any kind of joke. White Yaksha met 16 Knights' gaze. I think you guys are the same, right? What's going on? Noah asked directly. Is this letter a premonition of a crime? No, this letter is a prophecy made by Thousand Eyes, an officer who has the gift of seeing the future. White Yaksha closed his eyes gently as he fanned himself with the paper fan in his hand. The reliability of the prophecy is almost 100%. At least, it hasn't been wrong so far. So, I have to tell you that this is definitely not a joke. I see, Noah said calmly. So, as the ruler of the strongest class, you came to the North District to hold the festival together with Salamandra? No, I'll help with the birth ceremony this time. The main reason is that the other rulers in the Northern District aren't cooperating with Shadora's birth ceremony at all. As a result, as the ruler of the Eastern District, it's my turn to be the co-host, White Yaksha said in a bitter tone. So, if you're wondering if there's a secret behind why the North and East District will hold the ceremony together, you'll probably be disappointed. It's only because the other rulers in the North District won't cooperate that it's my turn. Noah was instantly speechless. Not to mention Noah, even 16 Knights looked as if she had eaten a fly. Her face was full of bitterness. In the end, he guessed a lot of reasons, but he didn't expect the reason to be so simple. Was this the so-called being too smart for your own good? However, this way, the reason why White Yaksha sent an invitation letter to No Name was clear. This was because the mission of No Name, which had lost its flag and name, was to defeat the Demon King. It was because of this reason that when Noah exposed the purpose of White Yaksha's invitation in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon Birth Ceremony, White Yaksha said, "If I can't guess something of this level, then I won't be able to use defeat the Demon King as the mission of the community. In other words, the reason you sent us the invitation letter is to let us take the Demon King's head?" 16 Knights had a ferocious warrior expression on his face. How despicable! Did things become so interesting? Reverse 16 Knights didn't have the slightest bit of interest in political disputes. However, if he played a game of bestowment with the Demon King, it would ignite 16 Knights' fighting spirit more than anything else. The problematic child, who longed to be moved and entertained, let out an aura as if he was looking for an opponent, telling everyone present. At this moment, 16 Knights was in a very good mood. However, 16 Knights' good mood caused the person who was in the worst mood to explode. If you want to play, then go back to your territory to play. Mandela shouted angrily. Unlike you nameless people who raise the slogan, "Down with the Demon King," as if it's a game, once we lose in front of the Demon King, don't you know what kind of price we will have to pay? You will be destroyed by the Demon King. Ren's expression stiffened slightly, and then became gloomy. The Demon King's attack wasn't a game. Once they lost in the game with the Demon King, then the tragic situation in No Name's base might happen to Salamandra. Mandela clearly understood this point. When 16 Knights was so excited because of the appearance of the Demon King, it was natural that Mandela would be furious. However, in response to this, 16 Knights looked straight at Mandela with an unruly expression. What? Was the famous Salamandra afraid? When the time comes, just obediently hide behind us and be protected by us. What did you say? Mandela was furious, and one of his hands reached for the hilt of the long sword at his waist. Brother Mandela. Shadora was shocked and hurriedly tried to stop him. At this moment, a cold sense of oppression enveloped Mandela. Mandela's hand froze, and his whole body stiffened as if he was touched by something cold. He raised his head abruptly and looked in the direction of the cold sense of oppression. There, Noah looked at Mandela with an unusually calm gaze and said slowly, "Don't worry, Mandela. This time, I won't be merciful. If you're prepared to risk your life, then draw your sword." Mandela only felt suffocated, and his expression turned ugly. One of his hands couldn't move at all, and he couldn't reach for the hilt of the sword that was not far away. "You should give me the same, Mandela." White Yaksha's brows furrowed. "You're the ones who need help. Is this the tone you use to ask for help? We're dealing with the Demon King." Mandela's expression kept changing as he stared at Noah and the others. Can a group of no-name really help us defeat the Demon King? 16 Knights Reversal grinned with interest. "In other words, are you going to test our abilities?" "I won't stop you, Mandela." White Yaksha glanced at Mandela. "But I have to tell you, those two over there, one has a gift that even the so-called omniscient Laplace couldn't identify, and the other has more than 1,000 types of divine armament. If you think there's a way to test their abilities, then I'm looking forward to it." "A gift that even Laplace couldn't identify?" Mandela's eyes widened. "More than 1,000 types of divine armament?" Shadara was even more shocked. "Impossible!" Mandela shouted. "Let's not talk about the former for now. How is it possible to have 1,000 types of divine armament? It should be known that divine armament bestowed with divine armament was a mythical item with terrifying power. It was like a godly gun that left the opponent with nowhere to run, a gun that would never miss a single shot Gungnir. It was like the divine spear of victory that, once thrown, would definitely lead the result to victory, the Brahmastra spear. It was like a cursed divine spear that could reverse cause and effect and definitely hit the heart, the spear of piercing death, Gibalg. These terrifying divine armament bestowed with divine armament were terrifying existences that even the 3 strongest types of boxers couldn't ignore. And these divine armament bestowed with divine armament were almost all in the hands of the highest level Asura gods and Buddhas. The rest of the people only had imitations of divine armament. Those who had the real thing, which one of them wasn't a famous person in boxers? Noah had more than 1,000 types of divine armament bestowed like this? There should be a limit to joking, right? However, this was also the reason why White Yaksha, who was once a 2-digit demon king, was so shocked. If he only had 1 or 2, it wouldn't be so shocking. However, if there were more than 1,000 types, that would be too ridiculous. "Anyway, I won't believe it." Mandela stared at Noah. "Unless you can show it to me." Chapter 1309. "Unless you can take it out and show it to me." The moment he said that, the entire space fell into a strange silence. Everyone present turned their gaze to Noah. They did not even dare to blink, worried that they would miss something. This included White Yaksha and 16 Knights, who had personally witnessed Noah using the Gate of Babylon to project thousands of treasures in the most extravagant way to vent his anger. That was the same for White Yaksha and 16 Knights. Among them, Ren even looked at Noah with some anticipation and nervousness. After all, the last time Noah fought Arjul, Ren was unable to rush to the scene before Noah finished off Luos and Arjul because of his leg strength. After that, when he heard that Noah had at least 1,000 types of Godhead bestowment armaments, Ren was like Mandela now. He could not believe it no matter what. Later on, during the month-long community activities, whenever the community encountered some difficulties, Noah was always able to take out items with magical effects to help the community overcome the difficulties. This made Ren gradually become skeptical. Now, it was the time to witness Noah's heritage. Under such circumstances, Noah frowned slightly. He looked up slightly and looked at Mandela without saying a word. "What's wrong?" Mandela was still staring at Noah. There was no mockery or contempt in his expression. There was only probing. "You can't take it out? Can't take it out?" It could only be said that this was a joke. Even the hero King Gilgamesh had thousands of prototypes of treasures, let alone Noah, who had more treasures than the hero King Gilgamesh. After all, the treasures in the hero King Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon were only prototypes at best. Noah's Gate of Babylon had treasures that could exist in the form of weapons and items. In ancient times, the establishment of various mythological systems was based on reference, so the contents of many mythological systems were basically the same. Under such circumstances, each prototype of treasures would give birth to 2 or 3 types of treasures, which were owned by famous figures in various mythological systems. In this way, all the noble phantoms that could exist in the form of weapons and tools would be stored in Noah's Gate of Babylon. The number of noble phantoms alone had reached tens of thousands. Now, everyone was asking Noah to take out thousands of treasures? It couldn't be any simpler. However, before that, there was one thing that Noah needed to confirm. What about the reward? Noah met Mandela's gaze. If we help you defeat the Demon King, what kind of reward will we get? Hearing this, Mandela was stunned at first and almost subconsciously wanted to scold Noah. That was the Demon King. If it could be defeated so easily, then Mandela would not have needed to lower himself to ask for help at all. Wasn't it too early to talk about the reward now? Mandela, who had these thoughts flash through his mind, immediately dispelled this idea and came up with another one. If the man in front of him really had thousands of divine personas bestowed weapons, then he might really be able to defeat the Demon King. With thousands of divine personas bestowed gifts, Noah would have to be at least a 4-digit level just by relying on those gifts alone. What's more, in the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, Noah did not use any of the gifts. He only used 2 fingers to block Mandela's sword and forced Mandela to retreat. It was impossible that he only relied on those powerful divine personas. In this case, with Noah's own strength and the many divine personas bestowed gifts, he would definitely be able to reach the 4-digit level. As long as it was not a 3-digit level existence like the Asura gods and Buddhas in various myths and legends, then defeating the Demon King with 4-digit strength was not a fantasy. So, Mandela was silent for a while. After a while, he looked at Noah. What kind of reward do you want? In other words, he allowed Noah to do as he pleased. Noah's eyes flashed, then he suddenly smiled and turned his gaze to Shadara, the leader of Salamandra. In that case, my condition is that if we help you defeat the Demon King, the ownership of the Demon King will belong to us. No name, huh? Shadara was stunned. The others were also slightly stunned. Then they fell silent one after another. Only 16 Knights and Ren's eyes lit up slightly. There was no doubt that the Demon King was a natural disaster for the box. However, this also proved that the power of every Demon King was extremely terrifying. Therefore, if they could get a Demon King to join them, it would be a good thing that could only be chanced upon and not sought after. However, in the box, there was such a rule. Once they were able to clear the game held by the Demon King, then the Demon King would forever belong to the community that cracked the game. And if there were more than 2 communities that cracked the game, then the ownership of the Demon King would be negotiated between the participating communities. According to this rule, only one of the 2 communities, No Name and Salamandra, who were involved in the invading Demon King's gift game, would be able to obtain the ownership of the Demon King. At this moment, Noah was asking Salamandra to give the ownership of the Demon King to No Name. Shadora hesitated. There was no other way. For Salamandra, which did not have many elite members, the Demon King joining them was also a very attractive thing. It was not an exaggeration to say that it would be like adding wings to a tiger. Giving away the ownership of a Demon King just like that, no matter who it was something that could not be magnanimous. Shadora was only 11 years old. It was too difficult for Shadora to make such an important decision. As for Mandela, he had something to say, but he was stopped by 16 knights who had been staring at him. Only the leader of the community can make such a decision, right? Suddenly, Mandela was speechless. Looking at Shadora's troubled expression, Noah decided to give her a final push. Clang! At this moment, the entire space was replaced by a dazzling golden light. Everyone who fell into silence was suddenly shocked. When they raised their heads, the scene that appeared in front of everyone's eyes made everyone's eyes tremble. They saw golden ripples that emitted a bright golden light flashing out of the space around Noah like water waves. Inside, an ancient and noble aura, extremely luxurious-looking sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and other weapons slowly appeared. looking at the golden ripples that filled the entire space, as well as the sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and all kinds of weapons emerging from the golden ripples. Everyone was in a daze. Except for reverse 16 knights, who didn't know much about the weapons in myths and legends, the rest were all able to distinguish the origins of those weapons. Bestowing a weapon? Rin was in a daze. It's true. All of them are Godhead-level weapons bestowed. How is this possible? Mandela was shocked. How could such a thing really happen? Really? White Yaksha laughed bitterly. Even though I've seen it once, I can't help but be shocked. There are really so many Godhead-level weapons bestowed. Shadora's eyes glowed brightly as she stared at Noah. This person might really be able to help us defeat the Demon King. Looking at the group of people who were looking at the relic in a daze, Noah knew that his intimidation had worked. What do you think? Noah looked straight at Shadora. If this is the case, do you believe that I have the ability to defeat the Demon King and obtain the rights to the Demon King? Shadora nodded her head heavily. Thus, Shadora agreed. Chapter 1310. After settling the matter of the Demon King's attack, Shadora began to discuss the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony with everyone. They mainly talked about the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. After all, if the Demon King chose to attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, it meant that he wanted to attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Therefore, including Noah, 16 Knights, and Byakuya, everyone thought that the Demon King would not attack after the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. The Fire Dragon's birth ceremony would take a few more days. In other words, the Demon King would choose a time in these few days to attack the 400000 outer sect. In view of this, Salamandra, as the organizer of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, would let the military police increase their vigilance in these few days to not let go of any suspicious places. No Name, on the other hand, would stay by Shadora's side during this period of time to ensure her safety. As one of the leaders of the North District, the possibility of Shadora being targeted by the Demon King was very high. Therefore, not only No Name's group, but even Byakuya would accompany Shadora in public to protect the safety of this young leader of the North District and prevent her from being harmed by the Demon King. Shadora seemed to have some opinions about the fact that everyone put her safety first, but she did not voice it out. Perhaps, Shadora thought that compared to her safety, the 400000 outer sect needed more protection. Unfortunately, unlike Salamandra, No Name did not have many members. In fact, there were very few members. There were only 4 people: Noah, 16 Knights, Jioyu, and Haruhibe Masaki. Even if Hei-Tu was included, there were only 5 people. As for Ren, this young leader did not have much combat strength and could not be considered as part of the group. This way, even if Letitia and Aster were included, No Name could only take out 7 people. Using 7 people to protect the safety of the entire 400000 outer sect? No matter what, it was not realistic. Moreover, the Demon King would attack during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, so it was very likely that he would attack Shadora. Focusing on protecting Shadora was the most rational thing to do. It was because of this that Shadora didn't raise any objections. She could only acquiesce. The final decision was that during the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, as long as they were in public, the people from No Name would accompany Shadora. Tomorrow, there will only be one game of grace that Shadora will host. In the end, Mandela threw out this sentence. I hope that you will all be there. After saying that, Shadora and Mandela once again looked at Noah discreetly. Then, they left the reception hall and returned to the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony. Looking at the direction in which Shadora and Mandela left, 16 Knights shrugged as he recalled the gazes they cast at Noah when they left. It seems that the limelight this time has been completely stolen by this little brother. But, do you want to be in the limelight? Noah glanced at 16 Knights. Then why didn't you just teach that Mandela guy a lesson? I guarantee that you will be in the limelight more than anything else. Unfortunately, that guy didn't look for trouble with me. 16 Knights curled his lips. If you don't scare him, maybe I will be able to make a move later? Seeing the dangerous smile on the face of 16 knights, Ren, who clearly knew how troublesome this problem child was, felt his scalp go numb. He quickly opened his mouth. Please, please don't do that. We are now in a cooperative relationship with Salamandra. Don't do anything that will damage our relationship. If you really want to be in the limelight, just take out your grace card and show it to others. White Yaksha said gloatingly. Although it's not as unbelievable as Noah taking out thousands of divine sparks, even Laplace couldn't identify your truth unknown. I guarantee that many people will also find it unbelievable. Then forget it. 16 Knights spread his hands. I want to be in the limelight, not show off. For things like showing off, it's better to wait until I defeat an arrogant opponent and take out the grace card when the other party asks, "What is your grace card?" That's cool and interesting. Hearing this kind of development, everyone could only look at each other in dismay. Then, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, it had to be said that this kind of situation could really happen. It was indeed quite eye-catching. Well, I hope the two of you can be of great use in the war with the Demon King. White Yaksha waved the paper fan in his hand and smiled meaningfully. Although, before that, the Demon King will be dealt with by me, the strongest ruler of the hierarchy. Oh! 16 Knights raised his eyebrows and showed a typical provocative smile. In other words, White Yaksha, you want to compete with me for prey? You're probably the only ones who can treat the Demon King as prey, White Yaksha said helplessly. Although I don't have any thoughts of snatching your prey, I'm still the ruler of the hierarchy. Facing the Demon King is my responsibility. White Yaksha, who said this, didn't consider that he would be defeated. However, this was to be expected, right? As for why, the reason was very simple. Because White Yaksha was the materialization of the celestial law called the heavenly shaking theory. The so-called heavenly shaking theory referred to the geocentric theory. In the heavenly shaking theory, the Earth was the center of the universe and the other planets orbited the Earth. Including the sun. White Yaksha was the materialization of this heavenly shaking theory. The celestial law that existed before the concept of heaven and earth was born ruled the center of all the views of the universe. However, with the development of human history, the heavenly shaking theory was gradually denied. As the materialization of the celestial law, White Yaksha's spirit kept shrinking. In the end, it was suppressed to the horizon of the White Knight, becoming the king of the White Knight that would never set or turn dark. Because of this, White Yaksha was one of the star spirits in charge of the sun's operation. He was also the highest existence that could be compared to the highest level of the sun god. At the same time, he had the divine might of the gods and also the royal might of the Demon King. The White Knight King, born from these two, was the strongest star spirit and was ranked 10th in the box court. Even though Ling's personality was constantly shrinking and had converted to Buddhism, becoming a Yaksha, a ghost god in charge of water and earth, Ling's personality was once again degraded. As a star spirit and a god, White Yaksha was not someone that any Demon King could do anything to. If one wanted to defeat White Yaksha, one had to be at least a 3-digit level. And if White Yaksha returned the godhood he had obtained after converting to Buddhism and returned to the state of the purest and strongest star spirit, even the 3-digit Asura gods and Buddhas would not be able to do anything to this cheating existence. Considering this point, with White Yaksha around, no matter what kind of opponent came, even if it was a Demon King, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, Noah looked at White Yaksha. I think it's better for you to be careful. This sentence stunned White Yaksha and he frowned. What? Do you think I'll lose to a mere Demon King? No, in terms of combat strength, I'm afraid that an existence that can guarantee that he can defeat you has not appeared until now, right? Noah shook his head. However, almost everyone knows that the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony this time is jointly held by the East and North districts. They also know that you, White Yaksha, will definitely be here. Even so, the Demon King will still attack. This proves that the other party must have prepared a method to deal with you. You'd better be careful. White Yaksha fell silent. After a while, White Yaksha nodded. You're right. It's better for me to be careful. At that moment, the door opened. A shop assistant walked in a flustered manner and bowed in salute. Everyone, Your companion, Miss Juyuan Fei Niao, is injured. This sentence made the expressions of Noah and company change. Chapter 13:11. When Noah, reverse 16 Nights, Ren, and Byakuya walked out of Thousand Eyes Lounge and arrived at the entrance of the shop, Kyuki Soyuki happened to be supported by Hirai Bun and Kurorobi as they walked in. Seeing Jio Yuki's condition, the group stopped. At this time, Jio Yuki's clothes had marks that looked like they were bitten by sharp teeth. It was also stained with mud and the blood of unknown creatures. It looked very dirty. Not only that, but Noah and the others could also clearly see the teeth marks on ancient flying bird skin, which was usually not exposed to the sun, through the gaps in his clothes that looked like they were bitten by sharp teeth. More than half of the blood on Jiyuan flying bird's body came from the blood that seeped out from the teeth marks. Looking at Jio Yuki's miserable appearance, Noah silently looked at Letitia, who was at the back. Letitia lowered her head slightly, and even her voice became a little low. "Sorry, Master." The reason why Noah let Letitia stay with Jio Yuki and Hiroyuki was because he was afraid that Kurorobi would not be able to stop these two problem children if they were to cause trouble. However, Letitia admitted that since Noah let her follow Jio Yuki, then whether it was because of Noah's orders or because of the same community of companions, she should protect Jio Yuki. Therefore, Jio Yuki's injuries, Letitia thought that it was because she did not protect her well enough. Letitia's apology was not only to ask for forgiveness from Noah, but also to ask for forgiveness from herself. It was not only Letitia. Even Kurorobi and Hiroyuki seemed to blame themselves, thinking that they did not protect Jio Yuki well enough. Under such circumstances, Juyuan Fei Niao hurriedly spoke. "I suddenly left the group and acted alone, that's why it's like this. It has nothing to do with anyone." However, as soon as she said that, a light and tender voice with some worry and timidity sounded. "Yuki!" The sudden voice startled Noah and the others. They turned their eyes and looked at the source of the voice. Only then did they realize. On Jio Yuki's shoulder, there was a little person smaller than a palm. It was a little person that was emitting light, wearing a pointy hat, like a fairy in a fairy tale. Seeing this little person, 16 Nights was surprised. "Miss, what is that on your shoulder?" Juyuan Flying Bird shook his head in confusion and said, "That's right. This is what I encountered by chance when I was shopping. When it saw me it ran. I left the group to chase this child. In the end, I was attacked by a large group of rats at an art exhibition." "Rat?" 16 Nights was stunned. "Rats?" Ren was also stunned. "Rats?" Yaksha could not help but be stunned. "So that's how it is." Although Noah was also a little stunned, he was more enlightened. "Most of the blood on your body is rat's blood, right?" Jio Yuki said helplessly. "Because the exhibition is in a cave, in order not to cause a collapse, I did not dare to use the gift of simulated godhood. Moreover, there are many ordinary people there. If I'm not careful, they will also be affected. So I was bitten by the rats." "But," Rin said in confusion, "why would the rats attack you?" "Someone is probably manipulating those rats behind the scenes," Hirai Hybe said very seriously. "When we arrived at the scene, Yuki was entangled by the rats. Before Black Rabbit and Letitia drove the rats away, I tried to talk to them, but none of them responded. They should have lost their consciousness and rationality. But why would the person manipulating the rats attack Miss Yuki?" Black Rabbit was puzzled. Miss Yuki just arrived in the North District. Even if she came to the box court, it was only a month ago. She has no time to make enemies. There is no reason to be attacked for no reason. Who said that the other party must attack Miss? 16 Nights looked at the pointed hat elf standing on Jio Yuki's shoulder. His eyes became sharp. "Maybe the other party attacked that little guy over there?" "Ugh." The elf with the pointy hat was frightened by the sharp gaze of 16 Nights. He screamed and hid behind the waist-length hair of Distant Bird. However, 16 Nights wasn't wrong. If Jio Yuki was not attacked, then it could only be the pointed hat elf who was with Jio Yuki was the target of the attack. Thus, everyone silently gathered their gazes on Jio Yuki's hair. Being stared at by so many people, perhaps it really scared the elf with the pointed hat, causing the little fellow to shiver and hide behind the neck of the distant bird. Okay, everyone. Gyo-yuki quickly protected the pointed hat elf and stared at Noah and the others. Don't scare this child. Seeing Gyo-yuki's protective behavior, everyone could only look at each other and then bitterly laugh. No matter what, go wash off the dirt and blood on your body. White Yaksha said resolutely. Your clothes are also torn. You should change. Although the scars on your body are very small, it's inappropriate for a woman who should take care of her skin. There's a hot spring in the shop that can be used for treatment. Fei Niao, you can go there and take a bath. Saying this, White Yaksha's gaze swept past Gyo-yuki, Harai Biao, and Letitia. In the end, it stopped on Black Rabbit, who had the best figure, and revealed a covetous expression. This is a rare opportunity. The female faction should go and have a peaceful bath together. Seeing White Yaksha's expression, Gyo-yuki, Harai Biao, Letitia, Black Rabbit, and the other girls all shivered. They felt that it was becoming a bit dangerous. As the saying goes, girls always spend the most time on things like washing up and dressing up. By the time the group of girls came out of the outdoor bathing area, it was already almost an hour later. Everyone changed into kimono-style bathrobes and returned to the living room. Then, as the leader, Rin explained the situation to everyone. The Demon King is attacking? After hearing the whole story, the reaction of the girls was completely different. Jiyu Asuka and Haruhi Byaori's eyes lit up and they started to get restless. They fully displayed the fearless nature of a problematic child who only wished for the world to be in chaos. Black Rabbit and Letitia were shocked, and the other had a solemn expression. Their reactions were the complete opposite of Gyo-yuki and Harai Biao's. That was natural. Although it was not to the extent of once bitten, twice shy, the tragic fate of No Name being destroyed by the Demon King lingered in Black Rabbit and Letitia's hearts. Now that they knew that the Demon King would attack the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony, how could Black Rabbit and Letitia not be worried? However, the two girls also understood that the time to confront the Demon King again would come. Therefore, whether it was Black Rabbit or Letitia, after being shocked, they calmed down and focused their attention on Noah and 16 Knights. Seeing this, Noah said innocently, "Why are you looking at us?" 16 Knights put her hand on Ren's shoulder. The leader of the community is the little guy, and the countermeasures to deal with the appearance of the Demon King should be decided by the little guy. Hearing Noah and 16 Knights' words, everyone remembered what was going on. It was not that they ignored Ren's position as the leader, but Noah and 16 Knights' influence in the community was greater than the leader, which caused everyone to subconsciously seek their opinions. Ren, who was also well aware of this, did not express any opinions and just said, "We have already reached an agreement with Salamandra, and we will assist in fighting the Demon King." Hearing this, everyone's expression turned serious and they all nodded. Just like this, the night gradually passed. Chapter 13:12. The next day, Noah woke up early from his sleep. He was already dressed. He also washed up with Letitia's help. Noah held the small sword that Aster had transformed into. He brought Letitia out of the room that Thousand Eyes had prepared for him and came to the entrance of the shop. There, led by Byakuya, 16 Knights Reversal, Gyo Uesuka, Harai Hiroyuki, and Ren were all ready and waiting for Noah's arrival. "What's wrong? Bro? Why are you the last to arrive?" 16 Knights Reversal put one hand in his pocket and looked at Letitia, who was behind Noah. "We don't have a blonde vampire maid to serve us. We woke up earlier than you." "It's just the same as usual. I woke up and washed up normally. I didn't intentionally delay or be late. Isn't the timing just right?" Noah replied. "You're not a kid anymore. Are you so excited that you couldn't sleep when you heard that you could participate in the festival the next day? So excited that you couldn't sleep?" 16 Knights Reversal grinned. "You're right. I was so excited that I couldn't sleep." Noah laughed and shook his head, then looked at Gyo Uesuka. On Gyo Uesuka's shoulder, the elf with the pointed hat was still there. When she saw Noah looking at her, she immediately hid behind Gyo Uesuka's hair. Seeing this, Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Gyo Uesuka. "It seems that this little fairy has completely pestered you." "Really?" Jio Yuasuke had a natural smile on her face. But it feels good. Yuasuke is surprisingly popular with children, Haruhi Hiroyuki said calmly. She'll definitely be a good mother in the future. Mom? Jio Yuasuke opened her eyes wide and looked at Haruhi Hiroyuki angrily. Harisen, what are you talking about? Haruhi Hiroyuki tilted his head and looked confused. Am I wrong? That's right, that's right. 16 Knights laughed out loud. It's just that eldest miss doesn't seem to have any immunity to the fact that she became a single mother at the age of 15. Jio Yufei glared at reverse 16 Knights. The scene was as noisy as ever, causing Noah to be at a loss whether to laugh or cry. Everyone, please calm down first. Ren quickly comforted them. It's going to be the finale of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Now is not the time to quarrel. Seriously, we might have to face the Demon King's attack today. The black rabbit pulled its long rabbit ears. Why isn't anyone nervous at all? Isn't it good? Letitia smiled. Facing the Demon King, rather than being blindly nervous, it's better to be a little more relaxed. It'll make people feel more at ease. No matter what, our preparations are complete, Noah said faintly. From now on, we'll just have to rely on our strength and a little bit on our fate. Resigned to fate. 16 Knights curled his lips into a smile. Well, it's not bad to come once in a while. Not bad is not bad, but I don't want to leave the lives of so many people in the outer sect to be decided by the heavens. White Yaksha looked around at everyone with an unprecedentedly serious expression. So, I'll leave it to you. Noah and the others immediately nodded. Just like that, the group set off and headed to the venue of the gift game hosted by Shatara. On the boundary wall between the eastern and northern districts, there was a tunnel that was specially dug out from a huge rock wall. This tunnel led to a gaming venue. The gaming venue had a circular outline. The audience seats were set up along the outline, showing the ancient Roman Colosseum that surrounded the venue. And in the center of the venue, there was a high platform. Black Rabbit, who was wearing a provocative miniskirt, held a microphone in her hand. Its function was no different from a microphone. She came to the center of the high platform and smiled at the audience seats that were divided into a circle. Sorry for the long wait. The main gift game of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony is about to begin. The host and referee will be Thousand Eyes' exclusive referee. I, Black Rabbit, will be in charge of serving everyone. Everyone, please give me your advice. Under Black Rabbit's familiar introduction and smile, a wave of loud cheers mixed with strange roars sounded around the audience seats. The sound frequency that caused the entire venue to shake resounded through the sky. You too. You too is really here. I'm here especially for Rabbit. Please perform well. Hakata aristocrat. Let us take a peek at the scenery under your skirt. Amazing enthusiasm and loud cheers reverberated throughout the entire venue. Although the Black Rabbit still had a smile on its face, its rabbit ears were trembling, and it seemed to be a little scared. Amidst the deafening cheers, at the front of the venue, on the balcony of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony's operation headquarters, Noah and the others sat there as VIPs under Shidora's special arrangement. Looking at the shockingly enthusiastic audience seats, Kiyoshi Asuka and Harai Buyao's expressions were stiff and disdainful. Black Rabbit is really popular. Although I don't envy her at all. While the two girls looked at the audience who were extremely excited because of Black Rabbit's provocative miniskirt with disdain, 16 Knights and Byakuya were also looking at the scenery under Black Rabbit's skirt with binoculars. Even Letitia couldn't stand it anymore. Master? Letitia sighed as if she couldn't stand it. You have thousands of Godhead gifts. Do you have any gift that can help your companions return to the right path? Even I feel that this request is too difficult. Noah also sighed and looked at Black Rabbit on the stage. By the way, why did you suddenly let Black Rabbit be the referee? It wasn't Letitia who answered this question, but Byakuya. I officially asked Black Rabbit to be the referee and host of the game. Byakuya didn't even take down the binoculars in his hand. He peeked at Black Rabbit on the stage with relish and explained as he watched. The news of Rabbit's arrival at the Fire Dragon's birthday ceremony has already spread. Many people are looking forward to Black Rabbit's appearance in the Game of Blessings as a referee. Furthermore, the game has the Hakata nobles as the game's referee, so the rules of the game have an inviolable legitimacy. Whether it goes against the audience's expectations to hype up the atmosphere of the ceremony or to normalize the game, having Black Rabbit appear as the referee is a beneficial and harmless thing. Is that so? Noah nodded thoughtfully. However, since the game needs to be legitimate and Shadora has to personally watch the battle, then this gift game is indeed very large-scale, right? It's considered the finale of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. Byakuya continued. Before this, there was also a selection competition to select the players to participate in this gift game. As a result, among the communities that qualified to participate, there were even communities that established bases in the outer sect with a 6-digit number. A community with a 6-digit number? Noah was surprised. Why would the communities on the upper level participate in the game held by the outer sect on the lower level? They probably want to get the reward from the ruler of the level, right? Letitia said. Although it's a game held at the lowest level, the organizers are Thousand Eyes and Salamandra. It's not surprising that the prize can attract a community with a 6-digit number. Noah nodded in understanding. At this time, Haribu Yaichi, who had sharp 5 senses, noticed something strange. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Then, his eyes widened and he exclaimed, "What is that?" Hearing this, everyone was startled and raised their heads to look at the sky. Then everyone saw it. Pieces of black parchment fell from the sky like feathers. Riding the wind, they slowly floated down from the sky. Looking at the pieces of black parchment floating down, Noah furrowed his brows. Those are black contract documents? Chapter 13:13. In the air above the boundary wall between the 3999999 outer gate at the border of the Eastern District and the 4 million outer gate at the border of the Northern District, 4 figures were standing at a height of about 2,000 meters above the protruding boundary wall. There were 4 figures of completely different sizes. The one standing on the left was a woman in her 20s. She was wearing a revealing white dress, had platinum hair, and was emitting a seductive aura. She was holding a long flute in her hand. The one standing on the right was a muscular man wearing a black military uniform. He had short black hair and carried a long flute as thick as a stick on his shoulder. The one standing at the back had a smooth appearance made of a material similar to pottery. Many ventilation holes were dug out all over its body, making it look like a huge anthropomorphic flute with a length of more than 50 feet. There was also a huge ventilation hole on its face, making it seem like a puppet. As for the one standing at the front, she was a petite girl around 12 or 13 years old. She was wearing a black and white patterned dress and snow boots. These 4 figures with completely different temperaments, appearances, and auras stood in a slanted square on the high boundary wall, looking down below. Their gazes landed on the location where the Fire Dragon birth ceremony was held. Looking at the venue that was filled with deafening cheers that could be heard even from more than 2,000 meters away, the seductive woman twirled the flute in her hand and said in disdain or envy, "A disaster is about to befall us, and they are still happily holding a ceremony? What's wrong, Latina?" Lotting. The robust man glanced at the other party. "Do you want to participate as well? If there's someone who can make me happy, then it's not impossible to consider Wells." The woman named Latting smiled sweetly. "It's just that, in that place, the only people who are qualified to be our opponents should be Salamandra, the little girl who has just been promoted to the position of the class leader, and the terrifying Sun Star spirit in the Eastern District, right? Did you forget that you met those little girls when you were controlling the rats yesterday?" Will narrowed his eyes. "Among them, there are nobles and pure-blooded vampires. That short-haired girl doesn't seem to be an ordinary person either. In addition, there's that elf who's guarding the pointy hat. She has some beads in her hand, but she's hesitant to use them. It's obvious that she's hiding some trump card. Don't be careless. We do need to be careful of purebred vampires. Hakata nobles can't casually participate in games, even if it's the Demon King's gift game, so there's nothing to worry about." Latting raised her eyebrows slightly. "As for those 2 little girls, I don't think there's anything special about them. It's just that you're thinking too much. There's nothing wrong with being careful, Wei, she said noncommittally. No matter what, in such a large outer sect and such a lively ceremony, it's not strange for 2 or 3 opponents to appear that we need to be serious about. That's true. La Ting nodded in agreement, but then she looked at the petite girl standing at the front with a happy smile. But with Master here, there shouldn't be a problem, right? Hearing this, the young girl standing in front, wearing a black and white patterned dress, raised her delicate face that was completely emotionless, and announced with a monotonous voice. Let's begin. Hearing the girl's voice, whether it was Wei Shi or La Ting, both showed a cruel smile. My master. On the other side, in the venue where the fire dragon's birth ceremony was held, all the spectators stopped cheering and looked at the black parchments falling from the sky with blank expressions. Those parchments were like pieces of black feathers, lightly floating down. Noah, 16 Knights, Jiu Yu Fei Niao, and Hurai Bu Yao looked at the pieces of black parchment that were floating down. Their eyes gradually narrowed, because those were contract documents. The necessary gift to hold the gift game. However, in the month since they came here, whether it was Noah, 16 Knights Reverse, Jiuyuki, or Hurai Hikari, they had never seen a black contract document. That ominous color was simply a representation of the word abnormal in reality. It's actually a black contract document? White Yaksha suddenly stood up from his seat. That's the Demon King's contract document. When the word Demon King entered the ears of Noah and the others almost simultaneously reached out their hands and caught the black contract document floating in front of them. It was a contract document with a seal with a picture of a clown playing a flute. It was written on the contract document. Gift game name, the Pied Piper of Hamelin participant list, 3999999 Outer Gate and 4000000 Outer Gate Realm Stage Area are the community of all participants and organizers. Designated Game Leader, Sun's Traveler, Stars White Yaksha. Organizers Victory Condition, subdue and kill all participants. Participants Victory Condition 1, defeat the organizer's Game Leader. Participants Victory Condition 2, break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance. Pledge, respect the above content, based on the honor, flag, and organizer's authority, hold the gift game. Grim Kimwar Hamelin Seal. When the contents of the black contract document were revealed to the audience one by one, the stage fell into a deathly silence. What broke the deathly silence was a heart-wrenching scream from who knows where in the audience. The Demon King has appeared. Accompanied by such a heart-wrenching scream, panic suddenly filled the entire space. Ah! The blood-curdling screams turned into sound waves that reverberated throughout the entire space. In the audience, one by one, the audience began to flee in panic as if they had encountered a fire. Calm down. Shadora stood up from her seat and yelled in a panic. Everyone calm down. All right, Shadora, it doesn't matter how loud you shout. Those who are running for their lives won't be able to hear you. Noah turned around and looked at Shadora. Hurry up and organize Salamandra to evacuate the crowd. Yes. Shadora quickly responded and looked at Mandela. However, at this time, Mandela was already giving orders to the surrounding Salamandra members. Hurry up and evacuate the crowd. Yes. After the response, the Salamandra members began to jump off the stage and went to the audience to evacuate the crowd. Damn it. White Yaksha's face sank fiercely and his whole body exuded a terrifying aura. How dare you act so brazenly? I will never let you go. Before he could finish his sentence, a gust of black wind suddenly swept up in the space around by Yasha. Like a pitch-black fog, it completely enveloped by Yasha. Everyone present, including Noah, was shocked. It was also at this moment that the black wind swirling around White Yaksha suddenly expanded. Bang! The violent impact shook the surroundings, and the people on the balcony of the operation headquarters were all sent flying. 16 Knights and Mandela, who were shocked by the sudden impact, reacted in time, turned around, stabilized their bodies, and landed steadily on the ground. Hurai Hiroyuki and Letitia also reacted. One was surrounded by a whirlwind, while the other had a pair of shadow-like black wings on her back, floating in the air. Only Jiyuan Flying Bird protected the elf with the pointy hat in his arms. He closed his eyes and fell down with a look of resignation, until a warm embrace embraced Kori Hiroyuki. Kori Hiroyuki quickly opened her eyes and let out a sigh of relief. Noah? Noah? However, Noah did not respond to Kori Hiroyuki's call. He gently raised his eyes and looked at the sky. Over there, several figures slowly descended. Chapter 13-14. Looking at the few figures descending from the sky, everyone held their breaths. Although it hadn't been confirmed yet, and they couldn't even see the figure's body clearly, everyone present had a resonance in their hearts almost at the same time. Among those people, there was definitely the Demon King who would attack this time. After causing panic and then descending from the sky like a high and mighty figure? Reverse 16 Knights stared closely at the few figures in the distance, and with a very happy expression, shouted happily. Not bad, not bad. Really not bad. This is the Demon King who brings disaster and fear. Bastard. With an insolent smile, Reverse 16 Knights, who was filled with excitement and joy, had a rare moment of hot-headedness. He crouched down, and like a cannonball, with a bang, he set off an astonishing shockwave and violently shot towards the boundary wall. No one had time to stop Reverse 16 Knights, who was charging with the speed of the third universe, and the existence that violated the rules burst out and disappeared in the blink of an eye. That idiot! Jiao Yuao subconsciously hugged Noah's neck and said somewhat angrily. He actually acted on his own accord. Noah also frowned and felt somewhat helpless in his heart. Reverse 16 Knights, at first glance, looked like a bad person, but in fact he was a real smart person, and the knowledge and wisdom in his head was not below Noah's. However, compared to Noah, Reverse 16 Knights was less steady and calm, and more arrogant and unscrupulous. Therefore, this guy would also be loyal to his heart, and when passion and enthusiasm appeared in his heart, he would never deliberately suppress it, and would even do things regardless of the consequences. Although Noah felt that when it was time to be calm, Reverse 16 Knights would definitely remain calm, but in a situation where there was no need to be calm, this guy was just a hot-headed problem child. So, Noah landed on the ground and put down Jiao Yuao in his arms. At the same time, Haruhito Hikari and Letitia also landed from midair. Master! Letitia looked at Noah with an unprecedentedly serious expression. Now, what should we do? Now, most of the people from Salamandra are evacuating the crowd. I think only Shadora and Mandela can move freely. You guys should move with them, Noah said fluently without the slightest hesitation. Those two should be confirming the abnormality that happened to White Yaksha, so as to avoid encountering such an unknown method in the battle with the Demon King. Therefore, you should also confirm White Yaksha's situation. As long as we can release White Yaksha, we will be no different from victory. What about you? Haribu Yaichi looked at Noah. What do you plan to do? Our opponent is the Demon King. How can we let that problem child act on her own? Noah smiled bitterly and shook his head. Then, the corners of his mouth slowly lifted to an unnoticeable angle. Besides, it's not like I'm not interested in that so-called Demon King. Leaving this sentence, Noah's figure turned into a stream of light and directly rushed in the direction of the boundary wall. Only then did Koyuki, Haruhito Hikari, and Letitia look at each other, nodded, and ran in the direction of White Yaksha. At the same time, Will and Latting jumped down from the high boundary wall and landed on the ground far away. Above the two of them, the petite girl riding on the head of the puppet that seemed to be made of ceramic was also following the gravitational pull, continuously descending. The plan of the group was very simple. None of the people here were interested in the people who were fleeing in panic. Therefore, the group planned to directly go to the stage in front of the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony and meet those who could be called their opponents in this game. This plan was mercilessly dispelled after 0.1 seconds. Shio dash. Accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, a figure soared into the sky like a rocket. With a terrifying speed that surpassed the speed of the third universe, It violently shot in front of Will and Ladding, who were in the vanguard. To be more precise, it should be said that it violently shot in front of Will. Shio dash. Will's expression changed. He only had time to do this before a face with an arrogant smile was imprinted in Will's eyes. We finally meet. 16 Knights Reversal grinned, his eyes bursting with a dense light. Lord Demon King. As soon as the words fell, a fist carrying a terrifying force was like a meteor that heavily bombarded Will's abdomen. Bang! A shocking muffled sound reverberated. Gu-eh! Wei Shui let out a bitter cry. His entire body was like a cannonball, rubbing against the air. Amidst the sound of breaking air, he heavily smashed into the tall boundary wall. Wei Shi! Ladding cried out in alarm and quickly stopped herself, floating in midair. As for the petite girl riding on Tao Bing, she stared at 16 Knights, who had sent Wei Shi flying with a single punch. Her eyes flickered with interest. To be able to send Will flying, this man seems to have some ability. Unfortunately, no matter how capable 16 Knights was, he was just a human. Of course, none of the humans had wings. 16 Knights, who flew over without considering the consequences, could only follow the gravity and descend. The solution to this predicament was a wave of wind. A gust of wind and waves swept up without any warning. The wind and waves surrounded Reverse 16 Knights, and Reverse 16 Knights slowly floated up, stopping him from falling. Is this the wind of the Kasuga tribe? 16 Knights stood up in surprise, then shook his head. No, the wind of the Kasuga tribe is different from this. Did little brother come up with some interesting method? That's right. The wind that surrounded Reverse 16 Knights was precisely the magic that Noah had used on Reverse 16 Knights after tearing open a third-grade scroll of the normal gale. Seeing this scene, the girl in the patterned dress eyes flashed slightly, then she turned her head and looked behind her. Over there, Noah was floating in the air. His gaze shot over and met the young girl's gaze. Everyone suddenly fell silent. 16 Knights felt as if he could control the wind around him with his will. Thus, he controlled his body and flew to Noah's side, standing side by side with Noah and giggling. I say, little brother, you already have 2 Lolita maids at home. You should be satisfied. It's better not to stare at the spotted Lolita over there from the start, right? Noah almost fell to the ground. At this moment, Wei Shi, who had been sent flying by 16 Knights, flew back and looked at 16 Knights with a ruthless gaze. Damn brat. La Ting floated beside Wei Shi. Together with Wei Shi, they stood side by side in front of the petite girl riding on the huge terracotta soldier as if they were going to confront Noah and 16 Knights. You are too careless, aren't you? You better be careless. Will spat out a mouthful of saliva. The brat. No, those 2 brats are not ordinary people. No matter which one it is, I didn't notice them until they came close. Me too. Ladding said helplessly. It seems like you are right. There are 2 or 3 opponents that we need to deal with seriously. That's a good thing. Will suddenly smiled. This way, our actions will have meaning. Noah and Reverse 16 Knights narrowed their eyes when they saw Will and Ladding talking to each other as if there was no one else around. Then, they looked at the petite girl who was riding on the giant terracotta soldier. It was obvious that she was being protected by Will and Ladding. Then, 16 Knights turned around and glanced at Noah with a displeased look. It seems like the person who made the right choice is you. Reverse 16 Knights' attack was Weezer. However, Will was not the Demon King. As soon as Noah appeared, he only had eyes for the petite girl. Therefore, 16 Knights said that Noah made the right choice. He chose the one with the biggest head. Under such circumstances, the petite girl smiled casually and opened her arms. Her voice echoed between heaven and earth. Come and play. Chapter 13:15. Let's play. Following this sentence, which sounded like a playful and willful little girl, the atmosphere of the entire space suddenly changed. Noah and 16 Knights narrowed their eyes at the same time. The petite girl riding on the huge terracotta soldier opened her hand, and a strange black wind suddenly gushed out from the sleeve of her patterned dress. It was like a darkness formed by dense black locusts, and like a fog, it filled the entire space. Whether it was Noah or 16 Knights, they both intuitively confirmed one thing: that gust of black wind was definitely not something simple. Before the game starts, let's ask. The petite girl opened her hands and let the black wind gush out from her sleeves. She looked condescendingly at Noah and 16 Knights, and after a while, she opened her red lips. "What are your names?" Hearing this, Noah didn't have time to speak. 16 Knights seemed to be dissatisfied with the petite girl's high and mighty attitude. He revealed an insufferably arrogant smile. "Before asking for someone's name, you have to tell them your name first. This is the most basic etiquette," speckled lowly. "Etiquette?" The petite girl's tone became somewhat sarcastic. "You didn't even say hello before punching someone else's subordinate. Is it appropriate for you to talk about etiquette? This should be considered the same, right?" Noah looked up and stared at the petite girl. Attacking someone while they are happily holding a festival is no longer a matter of etiquette, but a matter of whether it's reasonable or not. "There's no other way." The petite girl said this without any change in her emotions. "After all, I'm the Demon King." The moment she finished speaking, the black wind that filled the entire space like a fog suddenly exploded, and like a violent wave, it rushed in the direction of Noah and 16 Knights. Seeing this, the arrogant smile on 16 Knights' face became slightly ferocious. "Don't be so arrogant." After he finished speaking, 16 Knights went against the black wind and kicked out a kick that carried a whistling chi. Bang! Under the kick of 16 Knights, the black wind that surged forth like a violent wave directly exploded. "WH?" Lading gasped. "Okay." Wei Shi was also shocked. "Are you kidding?" Not to mention Wei Shi and Lading, even the petite girl was stunned for a moment and said in surprise, "He broke the gift with a kick?" In this box where all kinds of Asura gods and Buddhas gathered, it was not rare to see a gift that could nullify a gift. However, this was only limited to gift armaments that strengthened a single ability, that is, gift armaments that could only be materialized in the form of weapons and so on. The reason was simple. Since a gift that could nullify a gift was effective on a gift, then whether it was one's own gift or another's gift, it would have an effect on all of them. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the gifts that could nullify a gift were external objects in the form of weapons, tools, and so on. They could not belong to the individual. After all, different from the gift of a materialized weapon, the gift of an individual was a part of the soul. If that gift was a gift that could nullify a gift, then this person would not be able to obtain another gift in his life. Even if he obtained another gift, it would be directly erased by his own gift that could nullify a gift. In other words, if it was a gift of a weapon, it would be fine. But if someone had a gift that could nullify a gift, but there were other gifts, this was a contradiction in itself. And 16 Knights, as a human who did not have any special ability, but he could rush over at the speed of the third universe and send Wei Shi flying with a punch, it proved that 16 Knights had a gift that could provide a powerful physical strength. That gift was the gift of shatter the heavens and earth. In other words, 16 Knights made shatter the heavens and earth and power to shatter the gift at the same time. He had a powerful gift, but at the same time he had the power to nullify the gift. Such a huge contradiction was the reason why others were shocked. "What? Is this enough to surprise you?" 16 Knights Reversal laughed arrogantly and uncontrollably. "Hey, cheer up. You are the Demon King." After saying this, Reverse 16 Knights stomped on the air. Space trembled, and a turbulent current appeared. His entire body was like a bullet fired from a gun. With the speed of the third universe, he charged in the direction of the petite girl. "Oh no!" Wei Shi and La Ting, who were still in shock, couldn't react in time. 16 Knights directly passed the two of them and rushed toward the petite girl at an astonishing speed that caused the atmosphere to become chaotic. Only then did the petite girl react. Her delicate and pretty face returned to its emotionless state, and she softly called, "Shoutrum." The huge Tao Bing, who had been quietly floating in the air, suddenly raised its head with a huge ventilation hole, and suddenly opened its flute-like hand that was also covered with ventilation holes. Buzz! At this moment, The atmosphere in the surrounding space was crazily sucked into the huge Tao Bing, and the ventilation holes on its body were suddenly released. Whoosh! Violent atmospheric vortexes gushed out from the ventilation holes on Tao Bing's body, turning into ferocious shockwaves that spread out in all directions. Reverse 16 Knights, who was charging in the direction of the petite girl, was caught off guard by the violent atmospheric vortex and was blown away without any ability to resist. Looking at the reverse 16th Knight who was blown away, the petite girl gently smiled. She raised one of her hands and a strange black wind burst out from her long sleeves. It turned into a turbulent current and rushed towards the direction of the reverse 16th Knight. 16 Knights couldn't help but be speechless, but he still kicked the incoming black wind with force. Bang! With a muffled explosion, the incoming black wind was once again shattered by 16 Knights' kick. However, the powerful force of the black wind wasn't neutralized, and it made 16 Knights fly back at an even faster speed. It didn't take long for him to disappear from everyone's sight. The petite girl standing on the huge terracotta soldier named Shutrum lowered her hand and spoke with an expressionless face. Chase after him. Will and Ladding responded without any hesitation. Their bodies turned into arrows that left the bowstring and flew in the direction where 16 Knights disappeared. After Will and Ladding disappeared, the petite girl turned her head and looked at Noah, who had been silently observing from the side, and asked curiously, "Why didn't you attack with your companions? If that's the case, that guy will probably blame me for disturbing his hard-earned enjoyment, right?" Noah shrugged. "Moreover, the game has just begun. Why are you in such a hurry? Aren't you in a hurry?" The petite girl narrowed her eyes. "Your game leader is trapped by me, and I don't know when something will happen. Even so, aren't you in a hurry? I say, aren't you underestimating White Yiksha too much?" Noah looked at the petite girl with a smile that wasn't a smile. Even if the heavenly shaking theory is gradually being denied, and the spirit lattice is constantly shrinking, White Yiksha is still a top 10 powerhouse. Up until now, who knows how many Asuras, gods, and Buddhas couldn't do anything to her. A demon king that came out of nowhere wants to defeat her? Don't tell me you're new here? The expression on the petite girl's face began to sink. Noah raised his eyebrows. "Looks like I guessed right. You really are a new demon king." The petite girl didn't admit or deny it. She only looked at Noah with a new gaze. After a while, she asked, "What's your name?" It was the same question as before. Facing this question, Noah looked at the petite girl with a meaningful gaze and suddenly smiled. "My name is Noah. Please take care of me, Miss Pest." The petite girl's expression finally changed for the first time. Chapter 13:16. When Noah mentioned the name of this petite girl with spotted patterns, the way the girl looked at Noah completely changed. All sorts of emotions started to flash through her eyes. There was surprise. There was doubt. There was confusion. There was doubt. All sorts of emotions flashed through the girl named Pest's eyes one after another, causing her to forget how to react. Pest's reaction was the highest level of affirmation to Noah's words. In other words, my guess is correct again? Pest finally reacted to Kieran's words. Pest's eyes gradually narrowed as she stared intently at Noah. "But why do I know your name?" asked Noah as he met Pest's gaze. "Because I've almost gathered all the information I need." As he said that, Noah took out the contract sealed with the picture of a clown playing the flute. Bestowed game name, the Pied Piper of Hamelin participant list, 399999 Outer Sect and 40000000 Outer Sect Realm Wall Stage Area are a community of all participants and organizers. Designated game leaders, Sun's Traveler, Stars White Yiksha. Organizers Victory Condition, subdue and kill all the participants. Participants Victory Condition 1, defeat the organizer's game leader. Participants Victory Condition 2, break the fake inheritance and establish the true inheritance. Oath, respect the above content and hold the bestowed game based on the honor, flag and organizer's authority. Grim Gimel Hamon's seal. Holding up the black contract, Noah slowly opened his mouth. The name of the game is the Pied Piper of Hamelin, which means the Pied Piper of Hamel. I think that when you see the name of the game, most people already understand that the Pied Piper of Hamelin mentioned here should be that famous fairy tale, right? The Pied Piper of Hamelin. It was one of the fairy tales that originated from Grimm. Speaking of this fairy tale, there was one thing that had to be mentioned. That was the basis of this story. In Grimm's fairy tales, there were several stories that quoted real history for research. The Pied Piper of Hamelin was one of them. The Hamel mentioned in the story was the town where the story took place. In the history of this town, there had been a large number of cases of children suddenly disappearing. Because of this case, there is even an inscription in the town of Hamel. This inscription was the prototype of Grimm's fairy tale, The Pied Piper of Hamelin. This was what was recorded in the inscription. On the 26th of June 1284, on the anniversary of John and Paul, 130 children born in Hamel were lured out by the piper in colorful clothes and disappeared at the execution ground near the hills. This inscription was a true story that had happened in Hamel, and it was displayed together with a piece of stained glass. It was because of this inscription that one of Grimm's fairy tales, The Pied Piper of Hamelin, was born. After the 16th century, this incident was adapted into a fairy tale. Among them, the piper was shaped into the image of a rat catcher. In the fairy tale, there was a rat infestation in Hamel, and the villagers of Hamel commissioned a rat catcher to come and eliminate the rats that were wreaking havoc in the town. When they arrived at the town of Hamel, the rat catcher took out a magic flute and blew it. The rats that heard the flute were all controlled by the rat catcher. They were all lured to the execution ground near the hills and drowned in the Wacy River. However, after the commission was completed, the villagers of Hamel broke their promise and did not pay the rat catcher, so he left angrily. On St. John and Paul's Day, which was the 26th of June, when the villagers gathered in the church to commemorate St. John and Paul, the rat catcher appeared again and played his flute. This time, the rat catchers used their flute music to lure away 130 children and took them away. From then on, whether it was the rat catcher who played the flute or the children who were lured away, there was no news of them. This was the story of the Pied Piper of Hamel, and it was also an adaptation of a disappearance that had happened in the past. Most scholars believed that the story of the Pied Piper reflected an incident that caused a large number of children to die at a certain point in Hamel's history. There could be two reasons for the deaths of these children. One was a natural disaster. Due to the storm, a landslide occurred in the hills, or the flooding of the Wacy River near the execution ground, causing a mudslide and causing the deaths of 130 children. The other was the Black Death. It was one of the most serious plagues in human history that spread throughout Europe in the 1340s, in the 14th century. The name of the game is the Pied Piper of Hamel, and one of the conditions for the contestants to win is break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance. In this box with all kinds of myths and legends as inheritances, one cannot help but wonder if you are related to that fairy tale. Noah looked directly at Pest and explained with conviction. Moreover, among your companions, there is a woman called Ratten. In German, Ratten refers to rat catchers. In addition, there is another man called Wacy. His name is reminiscent of the Wacy River. You also called that Taubing Scherstrom. In German, storm means storm. Rat catchers, Wacy River, storm. These three keywords all appeared in the Pied Piper of Hamel. As for you, the black wind you used earlier should be the virus of the Black Death, right? Noah sneered. The Black Death disease is pestis in Latin. It represents the plague. In that case, it shouldn't be strange for me to guess that your name is Pestis, right? Hearing those words, Pest grew silent. However, if one were to carefully observe her, one would discover that this young demon king was looking at Noah with an interested gaze. You're called Noah, right? Pest said to Noah with a somewhat childish voice. Hey, Noah, do you want to join my community? Noah was immediately startled. After exposing Pest's true name, Noah had imagined all sorts of reactions Pest might have. However, Pest's sudden attempt to recruit him was something that Noah did not expect. That said, this was not the first time that Noah was being recruited. Thus, he would not lose his sense of propriety because of something like this. Thus, Noah said, Give me a reason to join you all. Is there a reason? Pest smiled. That was a smile that did not resemble a young girl at all. It was a smile that gave off a malicious feeling. Then Pest said those words. In that case, what if I were to tell you that if you don't join us, I will kill everyone in this outer court? Those words caused the smile on Noah's face to gradually disappear. It was replaced by a frightening calmness. You can give it a try. At this moment, Pest was able to clearly sense it. An aura that caused one's heart to palpitate flashed through Noah's body for an instant. Right when Pest was frowning because of this, something unexpected happened. Rumble. Accompanied by a loud bang, a huge bolt of lightning suddenly exploded in a corner. This lightning bolt caused all of the 4 million outer court disciples that were playing the Demon King's gift game to stop what they were doing. They raised their heads and looked toward the origin of the lightning and thunder. At that place, at the top of a minaret, Black Rabbit was holding up a Vajra scepter flickering with lightning. The request to activate the trial authority has been accepted. Next, the gift game, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, will be temporarily suspended. Both the participants and the organizer are to stop fighting each other and quickly prepare for negotiations. Both parties, please prepare to participate in the upcoming deliberation and decision. Chapter 1317. Between the 3999999 outer gate and the 4000000 outer gate, the operation headquarters of the Fire Dragon birth ceremony. In the middle of a large hall that resembled a meeting room, a group of people sat across from each other across a long square table. There were a total of 3 communities present. No name, Salamandra, Grim Gimel Hamon. The first community was represented by Benevolence and Reversal 16 Knights. The second community was represented by Shadora and Mandora. The third community was represented by Pest, Will, and Ladding. The 7 people sat on both sides of the square table, forming a confrontation. As for Black Rabbit, she was presiding over this discussion as the referee. Because of the problem of seating, Noah, Jiu Yuanfei, and Haruhito Hikari stood side by side in front of the wall next to the entrance. Looking at the 3 communities that were facing each other with a heavy atmosphere, Juyuan Bird lowered his voice and asked Noah, who was leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. No one knew what he was thinking about. Speaking of which, what is this discussion about? It's one of the rights granted to the game's adjudicator who has the right to adjudicate, Noah answered without even opening his eyes. Using this right, the game can be temporarily stopped and a meeting can be held to confirm whether or not the rules of the game created based on the organizer's authority have any imperfections. Haruhito Hikari approached Noah and stood shoulder to shoulder with Noah. Similarly, he lowered his voice and asked, "There are imperfections in the rules?" In other words, there are imperfections in this game? It's precisely because we can't be certain that we need to hold a meeting, Noah corrected him. However, this can't be considered the true purpose of this discussion. Not the true purpose of this discussion? Jiu Yuanfei no longer cared about the difference between men and women. Like Haruhito Hikari, she approached Noah and stood shoulder to shoulder with Noah. What do you mean? Because this authority can forcefully stop the game of bestowment that has already started, it also has a layer of meaning to fight against the Demon King who often launches surprise attacks. Noah explained. Like this time, one of the winning conditions for the bestowment game is to break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance. What does this mean? We need time to think about it. If we think about it during the battle with the Demon King, then the difficulty won't just be doubled. Simply put, it's the same as calling for a halt. Haruhabu Yaori nodded with some admiration. That's really a useful authority. The problem is, the other party definitely knows the significance of the existence of this authority. Noah opened his eyes and looked at the expressionless Pest. That's because the deliberations are used to confirm whether the rules of the game are incomplete. In the meeting, no matter what the outcome is, it becomes possible to reformulate the rules of the game. Jiu Fei Niao was stunned for a moment before he understood. You mean that the other party might propose rules that are beneficial to them? That's exactly what I mean. Noah's eyes flickered slightly. So, now it's just a question of who is faster. Would the participants solve the winning conditions of the game of bestowment first? Or would the organizer obtain the advantageous conditions first? Based on the upcoming meeting, the situation might completely tilt in favor of one of the two parties. This was the reason why Noah didn't take a seat. For the negotiation, it was enough to have Ren and Ni Hui's 16th night. The mission Noah gave himself was to solve the winning conditions of break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance as quickly as possible. If my guess is correct, Pest, Weezer, Ratton, and Storm should all be demons born from the inheritance of Hamel's Pied Piper. They were existences that were spiritualized by using 130 children as living sacrifices. With achievements, there would be inheritances. With inheritances, there would be spiritualities. Based on this, Noah believed that Pest, Weezer, Ratton, and Storm should all be demons that were born from Hamel's Pied Piper after obtaining their spiritualities through the achievement of causing the deaths of 130 children. As for the deaths of 130 children, there are also a lot of speculations. So, break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance should mean that we must find out the truth behind the deaths, right? All of a sudden, Noah fell into deep thought. While Noah was deep in thought, the deliberations of the deliberations quietly began. The first to speak was Shattara. I never would have thought that Grim Gimmel still exists. Shattara looked at Pest with a sharp gaze. You shouldn't be the demon king that originally led Grim Gimmel, right? Pest met Shadora's gaze but turned her head away disdainfully, causing a trace of anger to appear in Shadora's eyes. Feeling a little strange, 16th Nights turned her head and asked Mandela in a low voice. What's wrong? Is the community Grim Gimwar Hamon very famous? Grim Gimwar Hamon is a community led by the Demon King. Mandela closed his eyes. That Demon King was a demon king that once summoned demons from over 200 magic books. He used demons as the lifeline of the community. However, after that Demon King lost to a certain community in a game of grace, he should have passed away. I see, 16 Nights nodded in understanding. Is that why you think that the spotted lowly isn't the Demon King that originally led Grim Gimmel? Noah, who was leaning against the wall, also heard this. He more or less came to a realization. If that was the case, perhaps Pest, Weezer, Ratton, and Storm were all demons summoned by that Demon King from the Pied Piper of Hamel. Wait! Noah suddenly had a thought. Are all four of them really the Demon King? This was a question that was only natural. Weezer and Ratton aside, Pest and Storm were not existences that only appeared in the Pied Piper of Hamel. What if Pest and Storm were not demons summoned from the Pied Piper of Hamel? Then these two people have nothing to do with the legacy of the Pied Piper of Hamel. Noah's mind was filled with countless thoughts. If that's the case, the meaning of break the false legacy and establish the true legacy is clear. No, he didn't just understand this question. If that was the case, the rest of the questions would be answered as well. The true nature of this bestowment game organized by Pest gradually took shape in Noah's mind. And at this moment, the negotiation began. Let me make this clear. There are no flaws in the rules of the game this time. Pest spoke with a resolute and decisive tone. As the organizer of this game, we are currently being wronged. And you all have interfered with the sacred game. I demand compensation. Just as Noah expected, Pest planned to change the rules of the game to her advantage during the meeting. Ren, who was well aware of this, forced himself to calm down and raised his objection in a low voice. But Lord White Yaksha, who was appointed as the leader of the game, was sealed by an unknown method. Is that still considered proper behavior? Of course. Including White Yaksha's seal, there are no flaws in the rules of the game this time, Pest said in an extremely calm manner. Didn't you say that you two's rabbit ears are connected to the core of the box court? Even if I lie, I will be immediately exposed, right? Everyone was speechless. Chapter 13:18. In the box, as long as it was a question related to the game, the central hub of the box would be able to provide an answer. It was precisely because of this that you two, who was connected to the central hub of the box, became so persuasive. If there were truly loopholes in the rules of the game of grace that Pest used, Black Rabbit, who was connected to the central hub of the box, would be able to obtain the truth from there. Even though Pest clearly knew this, she still had a fearless appearance. This proved that there were indeed no flaws in the rules of the game. However, even if this was the case, Black Rabbit still had to follow the procedure. After all, Black Rabbit's authority to make a decision did not mean that there was a problem with the rules of the game. Instead, when fighting against the Demon King, using this authority to stall for time was of the utmost importance. What they needed to do next was to see how far they would be able to negotiate with Pest during the meeting. Due to the hostile relationship between the two sides, they naturally had to do their best to make the rules less favorable to the Demon King's side. Thinking like this, Black Rabbit could only choose to believe in Reverse 16 Knights and Ren's negotiation ability. He closed his eyes and his long rabbit ears began to tremble. After a long time, Black Rabbit opened his eyes. As expected, he smiled bitterly and said, "We have received the central hub of the box. I've already received the reply from the central command of the Hakata. The game this time indeed has no flaws or irregularities. Lord White Yaksha's seal is also formed using proper methods." Reverse 16 Knights, Rin, Shadara, Mandela and the others immediately grew silent. "That is a natural result," Pest said in an extremely calm manner. "In that case, the rules will remain as they are. I wish to discuss the date when the game will restart." Discuss the date? Everyone was stunned. Discuss the date? In other words, Pest did not plan to restart the game immediately? What kind of joke was this? Black Rabbit had made a decision to make a decision in order to stall for time. For Pest to take the initiative to not restart the game immediately, wasn't that the same as giving the competitors time to solve the puzzle? Could it be that Pest was not afraid of the game's victory condition being solved? Before the crowd of competitors, Pest acted as if she didn't know what she had just said. Slowly, she opened her mouth to speak. She slowly said, "I wish to ask the referee, what is the slowest possible time for the game to restart?" Slowest? Black Rabbit said with a confused expression. Most likely, it can be delayed to a month from now." "Is that so?" Pest suddenly smiled. "Then in a month." However, before Pest could finish her words, 16 Knights Reversal and Rin spoke at the same time. "Wait. Please wait." The sudden interruption stunned Black Rabbit, Shadora, Mandela and the others. "What's wrong?" Pest raised her eyes slightly and looked at 16 Knights and Ren. "Don't you want time? I'll give it to you, all right?" Hearing this, 16 Knights and Ren looked at each other. After receiving 16 Knights' signal, Ren nodded and summoned his courage to look at Pest. "According to the information provided by the members of our community, you should be the Demon King Pestis who controls the Black Death, right?" "That's right." Pest glanced in Noah's direction and calmly nodded. "Is there a problem?" "Of course." Rin couldn't help but become serious. "Speaking of the Black Death, it is the most terrifying plague of the 14th century. Since you are the Demon King who controls the Black Death, it should be a very simple matter for you to have the Black Death enter everyone's bodies, right?" Everyone was shocked. If that was truly the case, then Pest's purpose in deliberately delaying the restart of the game was clear. One must know that the Black Death's incubation period was at least 2 days. If they were to wait until a month from now to restart the game, then all the people here would have died from the corrosion of the Black Death's virus. If that was the case, not only would Pest be able to win the game effortlessly, but all the people here would also die. Thinking of this, everyone's expressions became ugly. "You've truly made a neither good nor bad move," speckled lowly, 16 Knights Reversal said with a mocking tone. "Are you not worried that we will be able to solve the puzzle of the victory condition within a month and, by luck, allow one of us to survive and clear the game 1 month from now? If it was before the trial authority was activated, then that might be possible." A malicious smile appeared on Pest's face. "However, now that the trial authority has been activated, that is no longer possible." "What?" 16 Knights Reversal frowned as he looked at Black Rabbit. "What's going on?" In an ordinary bestowment game, if there is more than one victory condition, then one will only need to complete one of the victory conditions to clear the game. Black Rabbit bit his lips because of the unexpected, unfavorable situation. However, once the trial authority is activated, the rules will be changed. Miss Pest is completely capable of demanding that all the victory conditions be met. 16 Knights Reversal's expression sunk. This time around, there were 2 victory conditions for the participants. One was to defeat the game leader of the organizer. The other was to break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance. In other words, if one wanted to complete all the victory conditions in addition to solving the puzzle of the second victory condition, one would also need to defeat Pest 1 month from now. After being tormented by the Black Death for an entire month, even if one didn't die, one would be left with half a life. By the way, although our community has yet to establish a foothold, according to our evaluation, even I can reach the 5-digit level. Pest mocked with a tone as if victory was already in her grasp. Even so, you all still dare to claim that you have a method to defeat me after being tormented by the Black Death for an entire month? Everyone was rendered speechless for a moment. Right at this moment, an indifferent voice sounded. Of course. This voice was filled with a matter-of-fact tone. 16 Knights Reversal, Ren, Sandora, Mandela, and even Black Rabbit became spirited. They turned around and looked toward the source of the voice. Will and Ladding were shocked. They also looked toward the source of the voice. As for Pest, her eyes flickered with a dangerous glint. She looked toward the entrance. There, Noah looked up and said, "Don't you dare say that? There is no longer any possibility of us losing this game." Those words caused the expressions of everyone present to change. However, while the participants had pleasantly surprised expressions, the organizers had gloomy and irritable expressions. This was especially true for Pest. She looked at Noah with an extremely displeased expression. "I truly wish to ask you this. Why are you so confident?" "There are 3 reasons." Under the gazes of everyone present, Noah raised 3 fingers before Pest. 1. Even if everyone else were to die from the Black Death, nothing would happen to me. To explain it in terms that you all can understand, it is because I was born with the gift of being unaffected by any negative energy. This includes viruses and curses. 1 month from now, I will still be able to participate in the competition. 2. I've solved all the puzzles of the second victory condition in this game of grace. 3. You, the Demon King of the Black Death, are no match for me. When these 3 sentences resounded throughout the entire hall, the atmosphere of the entire space became hostile. You? Rage appeared on Wells and Ladding's faces. They abruptly stood up from their seats. Provoked by this, Black Rabbit, Shadora, Mandela, and the others also stood up. Only Pest stared fixedly at Noah. Finally, a cold glint appeared in her eyes. That was the expression of Pest's killing intent toward Noah. Originally, Pest did not display any true killing intent toward anyone. The reason for that was very simple. It was because only Pest, Wells, and Ladding remained in the Grim Gimwar Hamon. As the leader of the community, one of the reasons why Pest started this game of grace was to have talented individuals join her community. That was why the term, subduing, was used as the victory condition for this game of grace. After Noah displayed sufficient talent, Pest extended an olive branch to Noah. Because of that, Pest did not display any killing intent toward anyone. However, it was different now. Chapter 1319. There's no possibility of losing. At first glance, this sentence sounded like a boast. However, if one connected the 3 reasons Noah mentioned earlier and the 2 victory conditions for the game of grace that Pest had organized using her authority as the organizer, one could understand why Noah would say those words. Pest had 3 main advantages. First, she could change the rules of the game through the discussion and delay the start of the game to 1 month later. Second, she could also change the rules through the discussion and make it so that 2 victory conditions had to be met in order to clear the game. Third, she could inject the Black Death virus into the bodies of the participants, making it so that none of the participants could guarantee that they would be able to survive 1 month later and clear the restart of the game. Under such circumstances, even if the puzzle of the second victory condition was solved, the participants here would not be able to guarantee that they would be able to survive until 1 month later and continue participating in the game. Even if they were able to survive, they would only be able to fulfill the second victory condition. After being tormented by the Black Death to the point where they were half dead, defeating the Demon King after 1 month was no longer a question of whether it was difficult or not. Instead, it was a question of whether it was realistic. After all, the incubation period of the Black Death was only 2 short days. 1 month was more than enough time for everyone here to die. Even if they were able to survive, it would already be a miracle if even one of them could survive until 1 month later. That was why Pest was so certain of her victory. Originally, the discussion and resolution was to buy time for the participants to solve the puzzle of the Demon King game. However, Pest's infusion of the Black Death virus into the participants during the game had completely turned the situation around. However, Noah's existence had completely shattered Pest's 3 advantages. That was because even if everyone here were to die from the Black Death, nothing would happen to Noah. He would still be able to participate in the game 1 month later. If Noah had truly solved the puzzle of the second victory condition of this game of grace, then 1 month later, Noah would be able to easily complete one of the 2 victory conditions. As for the remaining victory condition, Noah had also mentioned that he would not be tormented by the Black Death virus. Pest was no match for him. Such resolute and decisive words caused the atmosphere of the entire space to change completely. As for Pest, she was staring at Noah with an extremely heavy gaze. Her gaze gave off a deep pressure. The pressure that only belonged to the Demon King made Jun Asuka and Haruai Yayoi feel suffocated. As for Shadara, Mandela, and Ren, their backs were drenched in cold sweat. Among all the people present, only 16 Knights maintained a calm expression. He looked at Noah and exclaimed in surprise, "You've solved the puzzle? I think you should have noticed it too, right?" Noah asked instead of answering. The phrase, "break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance," itself. Hearing Noah's words, everyone was stunned. "I only noticed a part of it." 16 Knights shrugged. After all, the word, shatter, in the sentence, shatter the fake inheritance, makes one feel that the inheritance here is not some kind of real item, so it can be used to shatter it. After saying those words, 16 Knights suddenly smiled. For example, the stained glass that was displayed together with the inscription that recorded the disappearance of 130 children in Hamiltown. Hearing those words, Will and Ladding's expressions changed slightly. It also caused the eyes of Ren, Shadara, Mandela, and the other participants to light up. In this fire dragon's birth ceremony, many artworks were displayed as well. It would not be strange at all if there were stained glass among these artworks. Since it was stained glass, the stained glass would definitely not have the same stained glass. Ren immediately asked after noticing this. In other words, the phrase, "break the false inheritance and establish the true inheritance," means that we have to find out which stained glass is real and which stained glass is fake? Correct. 16 Knights snapped his fingers. Then he spread his hands helplessly. It's just that I haven't determined which piece of stained glass is real and which is fake. Before the meeting, I did some research and found out that there are more than 100 pieces of stained glass that will be displayed at the Fire Dragon's birth ceremony. More than 100 stained glass. Everyone looked at each other. However, soon, 16 Knights put on his arrogant smile again. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Noah. "Since you said that you have solved the riddle, it means that you already know how to distinguish the stained glass from the fake ones, right? I only noticed it at the end." Noah smiled bitterly. "Because you first noticed the word shatter, but I noticed the word inheritance first. In the world of the box, there were all kinds of myths and legends. They were the inheritances of the famous Asura gods and Buddhas. Once, in the world of the Godslayer, Noah was familiar with almost all the myths and legends in order to make the clone of the warrior able to be used against any god at any time. So, it was different from 16 Knights. After realizing that Pest and the others might not all come from the fairy tale, The Piper of Hamel, Noah, who was familiar with all kinds of myths and legends, including fairy tales, noticed that something was wrong. If you think about it carefully, it's actually very easy to understand. Noah looked straight at Pest, who was silent. Undoubtedly, in the real Hamiltown, The inscription that recorded the disappearance of 130 children was dated to 1284. However, the Black Death started to spread after 1350. The reason why it became the cause of the deaths of those children was because the Black Death after the 14th century was made into the fairy tale, The Piper of Hammel. After hearing Noah's words, everyone was shocked. In other words, the period when the Black Death was at its peak did not match the era recorded in the inscription of Hamiltown. Now that I think about it, the Black Death, that is, pestis, shouldn't be a demon summoned from the Pied Piper of Hammel. Noah said to Pest, who had a gloomy expression. Then he looked at Will and Ladding, who had a gloomy expression on their faces. If that's the case, I can't help but suspect that the others might be the real deal. In the original Inheritance and Inscription, the character, the Piper who manipulates rats, did not appear. It was only after the 1500s, when the Black Death reached its peak, that the rats and the Piper who manipulates rats appeared in The Piper of Hammel. In other words, Ratton the rat catcher is also a fake. Ladding's expression immediately turned ugly. The storm after that seems to be the real deal. However, the storm is a natural disaster that can appear anywhere. It has nothing to do with the inheritance of The Piper of Hammel. Noah glanced at Will. Therefore, among the four of you, only Weezer, who is also the Weezer River, fits the description of the original The Piper of Hammel. After all, the inscription of Hamiltown states that vanish near the hills. The hills here refer to the hills adjacent to the Weezer River. Tisse? Will was speechless. 16 nights the Reverse's eyes grew brighter and brighter. In the end, he finally revealed a smile. So that's how it is. Everything makes sense now. As long as the images of the rats, the Black Death, and the storm are fake in the stained glass, they should be shattered. Among the remaining stained glass, there should only be one stained glass that doesn't have these three elements. As long as we can find it, we will be able to solve the riddle of breaking the fake inheritance and establishing the real inheritance. 16 nights the Reverse laughed loudly. Well done, young man. While 16 nights the Reverse laughed loudly, Joyuki, Hiroyuki, Ren, Shadara, Mandela, and the others revealed joyful expressions. As for Pest, Will, Ladding, and the others, they all entered a state of complete silence. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.